Hello and welcome to Missed Checkpoints, the Video Game Book Club podcast. Today we're wrapping up our discussion of Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. I'm your host Marqus, and joining me today as always are the homies. First off, we have Dante.
What's good, everybody?
Next, we have Greg.
What up?
And last but not least, we have the homie Trevor.
That's my Von Karma snap.
Oh gosh, I was like, what is he doing? Okay, so we're picking up where we left off. So part one, we covered cases 1 through 3. We're playing the trilogy, so there are 5 cases in this game. So this part we are going to talk about case 4 and case 5. As always, it's going to be light spoilers. So if you haven't played it, please play it before you listen to this. That's your warning. So let's get started with case 4. Case 4 called Turnabout Goodbyes. In this case, Edgeworth is accused of murder, and Wright finds herself defending him against the legendary prosecutor, as Trevor mentioned, Manfred von Karma, and he also investigates the DL6 incident. So I believe the preview for this was, we talked about it last show, there was 2 men on a lake, Gourd Lake, and they were in a boat, and one of them got shot by the other with the whole Merry Christmas, so it's around the holidays, and the smoking gun is being held by Edgeworth of all people, so that's the shocker, and that's kind of like the cliffhanger you're left on. But so for this case, it is obviously you, Phoenix Wright, are the defense team. You're being assisted by Maya. The defendant is Miles Edgeworth. The victim is Robert Hammond. Prosecutor is the legendary prosecutor Manfred von Karma, and the cause of death is death by being shot by a pistol. So I'm gonna kick it to Dante so he can start the discussion on case 4.
Okay, so I know we literally just talked about this, but how do you want to do this?
I guess we kind of want to talk around the case and not necessarily give out details as far as like, oh, and this is what happened and this what happened, because like we do want people like to play the game too, so we don't want to, like, some people aren't going to listen to the spoiler warning and they're gonna go ahead and play anyway, so we don't want to say like super specific things as far as like, oh, this person was found guilty because of this incident and this piece of evidence, but we can kind of start, let's see, like I guess.
Do we just kind of want to go through the days in like a very general sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
That works.
So pretty much the first thing you do as Phoenix Wright is you go to the detention center, you talk to Edgeworth, and he's very apprehensive of you being his attorney. One, you're very new to your job. I mean, I guess you've been an attorney for less than a year at this point. And also, like, he has reasons, quote unquote reasons, to keep you away from this case. So that's kind of a big thing. What do you guys think about Edgeworth?
Edgeworth was being a punk, like straight up. Like he was very vocal in that he did not want you to be his defense attorney. I think he said he was calling a bunch of other people, but he basically claimed his case was hopeless and refused to get your assistance even though you kept offering it to him. So he was just very pathetic, and it was like I really liked him as a character leading up to case 4, so I was super excited he was going to be such a focal part of case 4, and this kind of turned me off of the character, honestly, because he became very pathetic and just like very emo, and I'm not about that life.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing that Mark said. Kind of, like I liked him as a character, and then you start it, and then you start talking to him, and he's kind of like, oh well, this, I have no chance in this. I'm guilty, and like I don't really know. At this point, I'm kind of confused as to why he feels that way. I guess it makes sense as you go through the story a little bit. You start going further in this case, but yeah, I was initially kind of turned off with his kind of his attitude early on.
Yeah, I had high hopes for his kind of story arc, especially after the last case. Case 3, I think, is where he ends up kind of joining your side towards the end of the case, and then to see him just kind of turn on you like this, it was just, I don't know, it was kind of weird.
Well, as we will find out later, he had reasons to turn on you somewhat, and we'll see how you guys, if you guys changed opinion on that. So, after that, you go to Gourd Lake, as Marqus said earlier, and this is kind of the focal area of the case. This is where the murder essentially occurred. So, you go there, you, I guess the first person you find is Lotta Hart, who is a budding photographer who is also a university student, I'd like to say. And she apparently got the photo that's going to be used as evidence in court the next day. And she has a little bit of a character to her, so how do you guys feel about Lotta?
I dug Lotta. Like, she was, like you said, she was very fiery tempered. But I thought she was cool because one, she had an afro, so she was automatically cool off the bat.
That natural,
right? The headband, the hairband, and then she was like, she kept saying or claiming she was from the South, or like she had like the quote unquote Southern accent, or and she
was
saying,
from the heartland.
Yeah, she kept saying UFO instead of UFO, and I don't know, I dug her. She was very interesting, kind of, like she was all over the place, but I felt she was pretty endearing. I dug her, and kind of like what you said, she had she was about taking pictures, and that was her whole shtick. Was she wants to be, I think she was taking it for her university class, the photos. That's what she said.
Well, when I was talking to her, it felt like home. I just wanted to go home with her and get a plate. Get some biscuits or something, some buttermilk biscuits. Like I was expecting like a southern home cooked meal. I don't know. She was funny. Like I liked all of her euphemisms, like her little anecdotes or whatever.
She
definitely has a very distinct character in this game, and in a game full of characters, that's saying something.
Was anybody else like trying to read her dialogue kind of in like a southern accent?
No.
I guess that was just me then.
No, I did.
No, I totally did.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't. I wanted to keep it pure. Oh, man. I was going to say, really after that was like she was really the only character that you meet in this, this case or this section of the game, and the only thing you kind of find out is Gumshoe mentions that they have a witness that witnessed the murder, but he doesn't tell you who because he's not supposed to, and you kind of find out from Lotta that her camera is set to trigger by loud sounds, so you start to think, hey, if there was a gunshot at the lake and your camera was pointed this way, then surely you must have caught, a picture, got some photos of something that potentially happened that night. So then she kind of is like, yeah, actually, you might be right. And so she goes to check her film, and she kind of dips out. So like you kind of like, okay, cool. She's definitely gonna hook me up with some evidence to prove one way or another what actually happened. And then I think from then it's really just like I think afterwards you talk to Gumshoe and you kind of find out that dude is just really, he's like him, and I don't know if it's mutual or if it goes both ways, but he's really like loyal to Edgeworth. And I mean it's actually kind of crazy because like we've seen in case 1 or not 1, case 2 and 3 that Edgeworth is not necessarily quick to throw him under the bus, but he's like kind of points out some ways when he's being inept or like, just like not getting the job done correctly. But Gumshoe does not feel any type of animosity at all towards Edgeworth, and he's like 100% like, yo, that's my boy. If he said he didn't do it, he didn't do it. I need you to get his back. Like whatever, by any means, you need to make sure he gets off because he didn't do it. There's no way. I know that guy. What's up, Trevor?
I thought that was more of him, like, looking at Edgeworth as more of a superior to him for some reason. Like, I got the idea that like he may have been looking out for Edgeworth, but it just felt like because Edgeworth always called him out in the courtroom and everything, it made it seem like there was like a superior and inferior like kind of relationship between the two.
I just
without going, I was gonna say without going too far into case 5, you kind of find out that Gumshoe has a specific reverence for Edgeworth.
But I don't know, like if maybe I'm just putting myself into it, but like I always saw it more as like a friend kind of relationship, or like I just that like somebody he kind of looks up to, and not necessarily like a superior, because like he definitely, as we're going to see in case 5, he does not go out of his way for his superior in case 5. So even though he does respect the superior and all that, and respects that his position of power, like I to me it seemed like him and Edgeworth are not necessarily friends, but he thought like like maybe they were more peers than like superior, like one is superior to the other. But maybe that was just me looking into that incorrectly. What happens after that though? I think that's really.
Did you were you guys surprised by Santa Claus?
Yeah, actually, the it's freaking Larry.
Oh yeah,
Dressed up as Santa Claus. There's a what do they call it? Samurai Dogs. It's like it's a hot dog shop, I guess you could say, on the edge of this lake.
Based off of the Steel Samurai from the previous case.
Yeah. Based off the Steel Samurai from the previous case. But so it's holiday season, so like there's not a whole lot of people at this particular location. Like the boat rental place is closed down. Like Larry's not working full time at this Samurai Dogs hot dog place. But when he did show up, he was dressed up as Santa Claus because it's around Christmas time, and he ends up like just giving you some backstory on like Samurai Dogs, and like basically some more backstory on Edgeworth, because and then apparently he tells you this lake has some type of Loch Ness monster-esque creature there that they've nicknamed or named Gordy. Instead of Nessie, it's called Gordy after Lake Gord. So he talks about they sometimes get people coming out here trying to find Gordy. So there's that. What's up, Dante?
No, I was just gonna say that Gordy's kind of also one of the big cruxes of this case. The reason Lotta's there in the first place is because I guess she accidentally took a picture of Gordy. She's the one that actually had the newspaper article, correct?
Yeah, like she tells you that she's one thing, but in actuality she's there for something else. So that's something that you end up finding out. But ultimately, that's what draws her to her lake, is that she's trying to prove the existence of this sea monster. So that way, she can have her name and her fame and notoriety that she wants to have as a journalist, or photographer. So after you talk to Larry, I think you're like walking around, and I think you ended up going back to Grossberg, who, if you remember, is the guy that was blackmailed in case 3, the previous case.
2.
Yeah, I'm sorry, case 2. He's the lawyer that Maya wants you to use in Mia's death in that case, but he refuses. Well, this time you go to him as like a peer, and you're basically like, hey man, like have you heard about this thing, and you got any advice or whatever? And you kind of tell him what's up, and he's like, oh well, he gives you some information about the victim, Robert Hammond, and you kind of find out that he's involved in this famous, they call it the DL6 incident, and he was a defense attorney, and this has come up throughout this entire game, this incident. So we kind of mentioned it before, but so the incident was when the police used a spirit medium, aka they used Misty Faye, aka Maya and Mia's mom as a medium to contact the victim to see who killed him. So there was that whole scandal where she incorrectly, the spirit medium incorrectly pointed out who was the person who committed the crime. That person ended up proven not guilty in court, and then she got run out of town, and that was like the last time her kids saw him. She kind of just ran away from her kids and all that. So it was like a traumatic experience for the Faye family, because that's what spurred Mia to get into the world of law in the first place. And so, okay, the victim is somehow tied to this incident involving the Faye family. So that's kind of weird. And then, you find out that, what the heck? You're like, what does this have to do with Edgeworth? You find out that the victim in the case was Edgeworth's father, Gregory Edgeworth. So now you're like, okay, this is getting a little bit weirder. So you have to go back to the detention center and talk to Edgeworth about the incident. And then, so you go back and you talk to him, and you find out that he was actually there the day his dad died, and he kind of told the story. I guess there's a 15-year statute of limitations about to expire in a few days, and this incident is about to come up back in trial, and that's kind of why he was like pushing you away, because he didn't want you to find out about this. And there's just a whole lot of mystery and intrigue revolving this case. So that's only like a snippet. You think I should go further, Dante, or should we?
I think that's good for the first day investigation.
Yeah. The only other thing to point out too was that his father was a famous defense attorney. So what you do as Phoenix Wright is basically the same exact job that his father was too. So that's worth pointing out at this point. But he ultimately, he asked for your help, or not. Excuse me. He tells you
he accepts your help.
Yeah. So you obviously, as Phoenix Wright, you're like, okay, yeah, I'll represent you in court. So that's basically all of day one, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty much at the first day at court at this point. I'll take over a little bit.
Yeah, that's cool.
So you get to court, and one of the first things Phoenix talks about is this debt he owes to Edgeworth, pretty much, and nobody really knows what he's talking about directly. I think they don't go into that until day 2 investigation, so we'll just save that. The other thing you find out about is Manfred von Karma, who happens to be Edgeworth's teacher. Edgeworth kind of hypes up this guy. He's known as the god of prosecutors. He's never lost a case in 40 years. That type of stuff. And he's like, you thought I was bad. Wait until you get in the ring with him. So going into this, I guess, phase, what do you guys expect for Von Karma?
I kind of figured he was going to be pretty close to, I guess, how Miles was. Maybe a little bit more, not ruthless. I guess it's not the word I'm kind of looking for, but something. He was going to be like a more extreme version of that.
Yeah, I felt pretty much the same. And as soon as he hit you with that demonic objection, I knew something was off with this dude.
The chopped and screwed version.
Yeah.
It's weird, isn't it? Because his objection doesn't even sound human-like.
He sounds like a freaking demon.
Like Akuma just got a freaking suit.
It's kind of what they had said. I felt the same way going in. I was like, well, how much worse in going against him can it be versus Miles? Miles was already kind of tough, so how are they gonna up the difficulty or just kind of showcase this guy's experience? And holy crap, man, he became he became my favorite character in this game.
I mean, for me, it was the way he was commanding the courtroom. Like, he was basically telling the judge what to do.
Like I said, yeah, he was in control the entire time. He was like, the judge is like, just the case was like a ball of Play-Doh, and he was just willing it to his, like, however he wanted it bend, or bending it to his will. That's the phrase. But it was just kind of like he had so much control. He punked the judge like the very first beginning of the case. Like, he was like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he said something along the lines of, I don't need you to do anything but just slam the gavel down. I got the rest of this dog. Or he said something along those lines. He said, all you're here is to just say when I'm done, you're gonna tell the person they're guilty. And like, he's so confident, and like he was like Miles times 10, basically. Like, can we kind of talk about the case, Dante? Is that
Yeah, let's
okay? It's like, anytime, like, during a cross-examination, so you end up, the first witness, or the witness that's called to stand, is Lotta Hart. So she's end up being the witness. And so when you're cross-examining her after she makes her testimony, like, every time you ask her a question, he always objects. And like, you hear in your head, like, this, or, like, he always objects, and he's doing a demonic, like, objection. But every time you ask a question, he's just kind of like, objection. What does that have to do with the case? Or, stay with the case. And he's always like cutting you off. And like, it's so it's such a powerful, like, point, because it's just like every time he cuts you off, like, you as the player, or at least me, I was getting more and more frustrated, because I was like, dude, like, stop it. You're like, I felt like I was getting bullied. And it did such a good job of showing, like, his level of expertise, and, like, just how good he was at this, and, like, why he was so successful as a prosecutor. Because he, like, not only was he, like, telling the judge what to do, but he was kind of willing my cross-examination the way he wanted it to look.
Doesn't it kind of feel like, in real life, when you have one of those know-it-all people, and they just say something from behind you, and you just, like, slowly turn around, and you're like, dude, really? Really? Again?
It was just, like, it was so, like, I think we talked about it with Miles last case 3 specifically, where it was just, like, every time you had you thought you had one over on him, he would just be, like, super smug and super cocky, then present something that contradicts, or, like, that merely proves this could have happened. Like, he was like that times 10. And it was just so, like, he was so good at getting an emotional response out of me as the player, that I was just like, this guy right here is good. Like, and I was just getting frustrated, but I was just like, I can't be mad, because, like, this is, like, super fun to be, like, feeling this way about this game, and just feeling like I'm getting beat no matter what I do. And, like, I don't know. I think they did an amazing job, like, showcasing his mastery of the courtroom. What's up, Trevor?
I think like, when you go up against Von Karma, it kind of helps you become a better player, because before you get to him, you can pretty much just press any statement. But I remember there being one part in the trial where, like, if you press too many statements, like, it actually penalizes you for it. And so you kind of had to pick and choose which statements you wanted to try to get more information out of.
And it's kind of funny, because that's actually reflected in the game, like, through gameplay, where Von Karma's like, Judge, this dude obviously doesn't have anything to say. Let's punish him every time he says something that's not relevant to the case.
How'd you feel about him, Greg? Rip?
No, my bad. About Von Karma, or
yeah, just like how like, basically your perception of what it would be like versus the reality.
Oh yeah, like I kind of said earlier, I guess I expected just like a more, like, intense version of, like, Miles, and, like, I guess it was pretty spot on. Like I said, I liked him. He says he has a few pretty good quotes throughout this case, as far as kind of letting everybody know his place, and how much how much of a good prosecutor he is.
One thing that he does do kind of early on in the case, I think it's during Lotta's testimony, Phoenix pretty much doesn't have anything that he can find like a hole with. And essentially Maya like stalls for time and she raises an objection. And because she did that, Von Karma had her held contempt of court, which got her kicked out of the courtroom, which I thought that was a pretty nice touch. So you're literally left with this dude one-on-one.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a good way of them, like, kind of like what Trevor said, like, you learn, or the game forces you to get better, and that was another instance where it's like, okay, even though she's, like, very inexperienced, a lot of times it's very reassuring for Phoenix to have somebody there that he can turn to and that he can bounce ideas off of or get advice. And when you're left on your own against this dude, it does do it, like, I think you as a player get like truly feel on your own. It doesn't do a good job of like showing that and making you feel that way.
So Lotta is the main like witness you're cross-examining during this phase. Did you guys have any opinions on her and her testimony?
Bruh, I'm so disappointed in her. Like, this is where the first time you encounter a witness that just blatantly withholds information.
Lies.
She's just like hella incompetent, and just like ultimately, like afterwards, you find out, man, I just thought it would be cool to be on the witness stand, but like in the moment, you were like, hold up, what? You thought? Like, you think? Like, no, we need some facts. Like, don't come up here and say what you think happened. We need to know what actually did happen, you know? And yeah, it was very frustrating. And like that's why I do like the characters, because like her outside the courtroom, she's cool. Like I really dig, I dug her. But like in the courtroom, I'm like, yo, get this girl out of here. Like she's not good for anything.
Greg, you had something to say?
Nah, I mean, I kind of just mirrored what everybody else kind of felt about it. She kind of runs you around basically and changes her testimony several times, and just kind of, for the most part, kind of a useless witness. But I was kind of along for the ride because I liked her as a character.
I think the evidence that she came along with was more useful than she actually was. Like the fact that she had the camera that took the automatic photos, like that was pretty much more useful in court than like her being on the witness stand.
She was clearly there for like the 5 minutes of fame, and I like how good of a job they did to reiterate that through pretty much her entire character.
It was just like super funny because she's like, I saw it as clear as day, and then you look at the photos she presents, and it's like two silhouettes of people like with fog, and it's just like, who's even the person that is holding the gun? And she's like out here just lying on fools, saying like, hey, like I saw this dude, like I definitely saw him. It's just like, what are you talking about?
So Marqus, as another graphic designer, when they started talking about enlarging the photo,
man, I was like, the pixels though. Are you gonna see all these jaggies?
This is clearly photoshopped.
I was like, man, like what you guys doing? That's not gonna make the photo come clear. What are you doing? Yeah,
but I guess the crux of her testimony was everything boils down to this enlargement of the original photo that you got originally. And it shows one of the men on the boat shooting the other. Phoenix objects because he notices the shooter is holding the gun with his left hand. The actual gun itself has Edward's prints from his right hand. So that was kind of the crux that leads into the day 2 investigation.
Yeah. So I think like kicking it into day 2...
You start off at the office with Larry and Maya, don't you? This is where you find out like the backstory.
I don't think Larry's there. I thought it was just Maya.
Maybe that's okay. I think you're right.
But yeah, you end up going back to the lake and you're moving around. There's less cops around. There's no Gumshoe. Larry's not there. Lotta's not there, and you eventually see uh oh, actually, the other thing too, didn't day one trial end with the earthquake?
What? Maybe it did.
Anyways, like at the very end of the trial, there's like a slight tremor. Hey, yo, Dante, can you? There's a slight tremor, and people kind of freak. People are like, oh, it's an earthquake, but you kind of see Edgeworth like super reflexively like curl up in a ball and like kind of hit the deck, and like he has a very like strong reaction or a response to the earthquake, and it was kind of jarring in comparison. Like everybody else is like, yo, why is he being extra? So like one of the first things you ask Gumshoe, one of the first things you ask Gumshoe is like, yo, well, what's up with Edgeworth? Like, why did he act that way? Like, what was going on? And uh, he's like, oh, well, he just has a fear of earthquakes, and kind of just offhandedly says that. So you're like, okay, I'll have to figure out what's up with that. And then I think he also mentions that Karma is bringing a witness, because in the previous trial, you find out that Karma also has a witness, but beyond Lotta. So he's going to. The witness couldn't make it that first day, so he was going to make it the second day. So now you're talking to Gumshoe, and you're like, yo, who's the second witness? But he's not supposed to give you that information. So you kind of just like, oh shoot, I gotta be on my toes, because there's no telling what this dude Karma is going to show up with and how that's going to go. And then, so you end up walking around the lake some more, and you meet up with Lotta, and she kind of admits like, yo, I was in it for the fame. I was trying to get my spotlight and all that. And she one of the things I think you kind of point out or reveal in the trial is, so she tells you she's a university student and she's there to snap photos of the sky and for her university, but you kind of call her out in court because you're like, well, you have your camera set up to react to loud sounds, and what loud sounds can you hear in the sky? And that kind of blows up her spot and like her reliability as a witness. So when you talk to her on the second day, she kind of admits like, yeah, sorry for lying about that. What I actually am, I'm an investigative photographer. And so she was looking into Gordy and trying, bring her, hoping Gordy's photo would bring her fame and fortune. So how did you feel about her response and like her kind of coming clean? Like, did that? I think like her being so straight up with you and just honest kind of redeemed her in my mind, and like that's one of the reasons why I like her, is because like she seems like super real outside of the courtroom, and like so like the one time she's in court she's like super unreliable, but I like her as a character. Did you have that same reaction, Greg?
Yeah, for the most part, I respect her because she came out and she's just like, look, bro, this is what it was. You know what I'm saying? I was trying to get my shine on. So, I can respect that, but yeah, I mean, I still like her as a character.
Trevor, how about you? How'd you feel about Lotta?
Nah, she can kick rocks.
Oh, really?
Man,
was that hard?
Bruh, this is a murder trial. That's what I'm thinking the whole time.
You got time to be lying on folks?
Exactly.
Life says thing. Yeah, I get that. You don't want her to be like, wrongfully or like getting people locked up for some BS, especially when she's just out here so blatantly just in it for the fame. I feel you. So after you talk to Lotta and you get that reveal, you walk around the lake some more, and you end up meeting up with Larry, and this time he has a very huge steel samurai like blow up like a wavy tube balloon man or whatever.
Wacky waving inflatable arm floating tube man.
Thank you, man. He basically had the equivalent of that with a Steel Samurai one. So he has that outside the Samurai Dogs, and you kind of talk to him. You and Miles and Larry all went to school together in the early days. I want to say like up to 4th grade. I want to say it was. So you kind of like, yo, what was the deal with him last night with the trial? Because he didn't seem that afraid of earthquakes when we were in schools, and everything like that. And he kind of doesn't have an answer for you. And you just kind of, it shows a little bit more backstory between you and Larry and Miles, because I want to say it was case 3. You find out that there is some history between you and Miles, and it ends up being not lovers scorned or whatever, like Trevor was saying last episode, but actually they just used to be friends growing up. And basically from here, you are at a dead end or whatever. So you end up talking to Gumshoe, and he doesn't have he hadn't found any more clues, but I think you guys are trying to at this point prove something has happened. So he gives you the option of like, you can take the police K9 with you, you can take my old fishing pole with you, or you can take this like metal detector from the evidence locker with you back to the lake, and you can kind of look for clues. And this is, I want to say, this is the only time that you have this kind of free will to kind of choose something, and there is no wrong choice. Like you're not getting punished or something. So, how do you feel about this, Dante? Like, how was this? I guess this because I mean I think ultimately you end up having to choose all of them. I think you can choose one at a time, and then once you find some new information with one, then you have to return it, then you can trade it, or trade it back in for something new or something different. So like, is this something that's common in the series, or was this like them trying something like a one-off?
This is kind of a one-off thing. This might happen one other time in the series, but you only need one of the items. It's just kind of fun because you get some fun flavor text with the other stuff. So what everybody choose the first time around?
So I was worried about picking the wrong thing, so I just went ahead and looked at the walkthrough and just got the metal detector.
Cheater! Oh, it's because you were playing it yesterday? Trevor, what about you?
I went straight for the metal detector. I figured that would probably give you the best chance of finding like a bullet or something, or even I think they had already recovered the weapon, but I don't know. I just figured it'd give you the best chance of finding something relevant to the case.
That's dang. I guess I'm the failure because I chose.
Dude, I chose missile.
Okay. And did you end up just choosing missile than the metal detector, or?
Yeah, I chose missile than the metal detector, but do you want to go into what happens when you choose missile? And
so,
also
I'll go all of them. So, like, I'm the true failure here, apparently, because I chose the fishing pole first, and because I was thinking like, oh, if I get the fishing pole, and I think you're trying to prove, I think it's the whole point of choosing these is you're supposed to prove the existence of Gordy, right? Like, I think you're supposed to...
I think so.
I think the whole crux of this is, like, Lotta has some information, but she won't give it to you unless you help prove or disprove the existence of Gordy, the Loch Ness Monster-esque creature, the lake monster. So, in my head, I'm thinking, oh, well, let me get a fishing pole, because I can just go fishing for the monster. And so you end up going to the beach woods where Lotta's camped at, and... you I think Maya ends up sneezing or something, and it sets the camera like going crazy, and like it's just like an in joke because like every time you come to this location, Maya makes some type of loud noise to set off the camera, and then Lotta gets super pissed because it's an expensive reel of film, and like the camera is set to use the entire reel of film every time it hears a loud noise. So, like, I mean, I think this is like the third time you're over there, and she sets it off, and it just goes crazy. So she gets kind of pissed, and then I guess before I go, what's up, Trevor?
So you didn't take the message it gave you to heart, like when it says, "What are we supposed to do with a fishing rod? Are we gonna catch the monster?"
Hey man, I believed. I was too optimistic, man. I was like, yo, I'm gonna catch it.
Like that one episode of Hey Arnold. They try to catch
And it was funny too, because like Phoenix Wright said like we should have brought the dog as bait, and I started dying, and then like. And then like
that's cold blooded.
Yeah, he says that, and then like Maya gets like, "Oh my god, I can't believe you said that!" And, like Phoenix was like, "Yo, I'm just joking," but it was just really funny, like a super like natural, like realistic response, because I could totally see me being Phoenix Wright in that case, like, "Yo, we should have just brought the dog as bait," and yeah, I thought that was really funny. So yeah, that's all you get with the fishing pole is that little gaff between you and Lotta and Maya. So then I actually, went back to the gumshoe, and I was like, actually, the fishing pole didn't work out. Let me go ahead and get the dog. I think the dog is going to be, let me get this assist, let me get this dog assist. So you take him to the beach, and as soon as you get there, he goes crazy, and he, I guess, breaks into or jumps into the Samurai Steel hot dog stall or stand, and he eats all the Larry's hot dogs. And Larry gets
It's funny because like the photo they used for the dog, when he like wants the hot dogs, he just looks super angry, and you're like, is he about to attack me?
Yeah, like he looks like he's about to be, he's sickened, you sicked him onto Larry, but he kills those hot dogs, and Larry gets super salty and mad, and then but that's the only thing you get with the dog. So then I end up returning the dog, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess it's the metal detector. It was so obvious. And you get the metal detector, and I think that's when you find. Don't you find
the canister?
You find a canister, Larry's air canister that he used to blow up the Steel Samurai balloon. You find that in the woods. And then when you ask him about it, he kind of admits, like, oh, like, what did he say? He basically says, I tried to inflate it, and it didn't go so well. It was broken, and so I used a different one, and that one rocketed into the lake and brought the Steel Samurai balloon with it, and it landed in the lake. And then you put it all together, you're like, oh, that photo that is going around of like supposedly a picture that Lotta had taken of the monster, or the Loch Ness monster or sea monster, was actually a picture of the balloon, crashing into the lake with the air compressor or the air tank with it. So you go to Lotta, and again, Maya sneezes and it sets off and wastes another roll of her camera. She gets super salty, but then you kind of tell her that, hey, Gordy doesn't exist, and you kind of tell her what happens, and she ends up giving you over some some more evidence that you can take to the next case. And
she also packs it up for the day, and she's like, I'm out. You guys are idiots.
Yeah. I don't want any wasting too much of my film. And then I think at this point, the boat rental shop opens up, I believe, because you end up getting greeted by this mysterious old man, and he mistakes you for his kids that are helping him at his pasta shop, and his kids' names are Keith and Meg. So he's calling you Keith and Meg, and you get brought into the boat rental shop, which has been closed and you've been unable to look into it or go inside of it, and it ends up being like, oh, like this dude is just very senile, and it's just him and this parrot named Polly, and you have go ahead.
Are they insinuating that like he's drunk, or am I just kind of misinterpreting that?
Oh, he's completely like he's out of it. I don't know if he's supposed to be drunk or just senile, like Marqus said, but this dude's really interesting.
I took it as senile, and but like I get what Greg is saying, because like his character portrait is like it goes every time he is on screen, he takes a nap, and like he's just blowing like damn near like what, snot bubbles or whatever from his nose, and so like when you talk to him, you say something, he's napping, he'll wake up, the bubble pops, and he's like shaking awake, and then he like answers you, and then he goes back to sleep. So like it isn't super clear what's going on with this dude.
He's also got a really good rock about his little animation where he's just like left, right, left.
What did you think about this guy, Trevor?
Yeah, the one thing I got from him was like you have to be very well, not necessarily particular, but this is one of the characters where it's basically about trial and error, like trying to figure out what triggers his next statement. Like, what can you show him? Because he's very reluctant to give you any kind of information, and it almost seems like he's not really unwillingly, but he's not able. But you just, man, I just went through every single thing in the inventory until I figured out exactly what it was to show him in order to get him to talk to me.
And so you end up like not really getting anywhere with him, and Maya just kind of boldly exclaims, she asks the parrot, "Have we forgotten anything?" And the parrot responds, "Don't forget DL6." And you're you kind of like you say that as you're leaving, and then you're like, you kind of turn around to try to get back in, but the door has been locked, and so you can't get back inside. So then you end up going to Gumshoe, and you're like, hey, I think this caretaker, the boat rental guy, might know a little bit something about the DL6. And so then you get some special permission from Gumshoe to go into I think it's the records or evidence room, or one of those two, records room, and you can kind of look up the files on the DL6 case, and so you get a little bit more backstory. So I think the day right now is December 26, 2016. So this case is about to be the case happened on December 28th of 2001. So it's almost hit that 15-year anniversary, the statute of limitations, and basically the victim, Gregory Edgeworth, Miles' father, he was a defense attorney. He had just lost a case, and him and his son were getting on an elevator, his son being Miles. And there was a huge earthquake, and it was that struck at the time that them two plus a third person named, he was a court bailiff, his name was Yanni Yogi, they were caught in the elevator. And it took 5 hours to rescue them. And when they finally were rescued, 2 of them were unconscious due to a lack of oxygen. And the third one, being Gregory Edgeworth, was shot in the heart. He was shot dead in the heart. So I think the only other information that you learned was that the suspect, based off the tip from the spirit medium, Misty Faye, was arrested was Yanni Yogi, the court bailiff. And his attorney was the Robert Hammond, the victim in the current case. And he found him innocent. And he was oxygen deprived and suffered brain damage and lost his memory in the elevator. And after the case, his case being found not guilty, he basically disappeared, so nobody has seen him for 15 years. So that kind of is where we're at on the DL6. So you've learned a little bit more backstory on the case. You got anything? Did I miss anything, Dante?
Just one quick thing that I wanted to get at. When you go to the boat keeper shack the first time, you know there was a second witness to the crime. So there was at least a little bit of a hint of kind of what you were looking for when you were talking to him. But that was it.
Gotcha. And Trevor, you got anything you need to add?
So how many of y'all immediately thought it was going to be this guy after it said he had suffered from brain damage and he was never seen again after that?
You talking about the guy at the boat shack?
Yeah, the caretaker.
I didn't even put it together at that point.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't either, but like, I kind of was thinking like this guy isn't. There's more to him like than what meets the eye. So him being the senile old guy, I didn't necessarily think it was an act, but I was like, he knows more than he's presenting. I was like, okay, there's something up with this guy, but I didn't put it together.
Man, I must watch too much Scooby Doo or something, because I immediately suspected him.
I mean,
Once they said that Remember DL6 thing, I was like, oh man, this guy has a history about him.
That's true. I hadn't put it together yet. There was a piece of evidence that you get later that I'm like, oh, that dude's the dude. But at this point, I hadn't put it together. But so the next day, or that day 3 trial is you are, I think your first witness is this caretaker, and I will admit that his act got pretty old pretty quick. What's up, Dante?
I was just gonna say, were you at all worried about Von Karma's little proposition that the trial would end in 3 minutes?
Oh yeah, I completely forgot about that.
That was another. I guess that goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Kind of the smart remarks he made. And I just thought that was, for a second there, I thought that was real. Like I thought it was about to go down.
Yeah. So what happens is in the beginning of the trial, you hear, or I'm sorry, not you, but Karma. He says, "Don't worry, the trial is going to end in 3 minutes. So we're gonna have the judge will have his decision at the end of 3 minutes and start." And basically, it's like, I think all of us, well, maybe except for Dante since he's played before, but I know I was playing on the assumption that, oh shoot, this is gonna be a super quick like timed section of this game, and I was almost kind of worried, so I was like kind of mashing through to try to read as much text as I could to try to have the most amount of time to present counter arguments and contradictions in the testimony. But it ended up not happening. But did that have any effect in how you played or how you started this day of the trial, Trevor?
Yeah, I assumed there was going to be a time restraint on it, and I had to click through as much as I could, and like it got to one point where I was just like, man, you know what? Either way, the way this guy is, I'm gonna end up losing this.
Huh? Did you feel the same way, Greg?
Yeah, I for sure thought that. Like, I wasn't sure if it was really being timed, but for sure, I was thinking everything was kind of stacked up against you at this point, because you've got this guy that's kind of senile. You don't really know what you're going to be able to get out of him or what he's going to say, and then he makes that remark, and you're like, nothing good can come out of this.
And Dante, like, I'm guessing you were just like, did you even think about that? Because I mean, like, you've played this multiple times at this point, so did you the first time
it
you
was
played,
kind of funny when I first started the trial. I thought that was something that happened day 1, and then I was like, wait a second, I know that some prosecutor that you go against in this trilogy does that, and then sure enough, day 2 rolls around. I'm like, this is a scene that really stuck with me throughout all of the series. This is like one of those scenes where the prosecutor's just like, I'm in complete control, you have nothing you can do, I'm going to end you as soon as possible.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, ultimately, like, it's just a bluff. Like, I think Karma used it as a ploy to make you sweat and kind of make you like, oh crap. But ultimately, that was not the case. And so you get to cross-examine the boatkeeper, the boat rental shopkeeper or whatever, at your own pace. And you kind of find out is that he does not, I think, what is it? He has short-term memory, Is that the thing? So he can remember things that happened recently, but he can't remember his name or his background, his past, but he can remember like events that have happened recently. Which is kind of crazy because I don't understand how he becomes a reliable witness, because there has to be a threshold of like at a certain point, like this is too far back for him to recall the events of this thing happening. So to me, it was kind of like a little far fetched just from the jump, because I'm like, so 3 days is not long enough of a thing for him to have issues remembering, because like he kind of claimed like, oh, I saw somebody take a boat out to the lake, and I saw this and I saw that, and it's just kind of like, oh, so he's trustful all of a sudden, like what's going on? And then on top of that too, like he was up to his usual antics and kind of being his senile slash drunk like shtick that he had going on. So like every time you're like cross-examining him and you're talking, he's sleeping and having the snot bubbles forming and all that. But then like you ask him the question, then there's like a brief pause, 3 seconds, 4 seconds rolls by, the bubble pops, then he kind of wakes up and then answers, and like it's like a canned animation that happens every time you're cross-examining him and ask him a question. And after a while, I was like, I just don't want this dude on the screen anymore. It's so like I don't like his character that much. Like something's not right with him. Like not and something's not right with him, and I'm not really feeling like these interactions we're having, it's just taking too long to get a response from him. Trevor, do you have something? Did you feel that same way, or?
Yeah, felt the exact same way. Like, I don't know, it almost didn't even feel like he was actually withholding information. Like, because of his act, it felt like he honestly didn't know anything. And then I started thinking about like how he kept referring to you as Keith and Maya as Meg, and I'm just like, well, how can he remember that, but he can't remember like other stuff, and he remembers some things. Like it just didn't. I don't know. Some things just didn't add up.
And then, like, on top of that, too, just because of how Karma is and how manipulative he is, they've kind of, at this point in the game, they've kind of mentioned that there are some prosecutors. I mean, and so far at this point, the only two that they've mentioned is potentially Miles, but also Karma may have tampered with evidence or done something to make the evidence look like it's in their favor. So at this point, I'm like, okay, I think that he got this story from Karma, and he didn't necessarily witness these events transpire. So it was just kind of like, how trustful is this? And oh, this is the game that Karma is playing. Like, this is how he always wins, is because he's in the background cheating and, like setting people up. And I think every time you try to call him out on something, Karma, he's doing his best job of just like blocking any type of question like that you are asking at this point, to kind of basically contradict what the witness is saying. And eventually all your objections kind of get overruled, and Edgeworth is declared guilty. And it's just like, oh, like, in my head, I'm like, yo, I goofed. Like, how did I let this happen? Like, okay, let me run it back. And, like, you don't get to run it back. It's like, oh, he's found guilty. And then, like, the game does this multiple points, or this happens at multiple points through this game where you think all is lost. And then it's like anime moment, like, what do you call it? Like what do they call it when the hero character just never, like, hero plot armor? Yeah, the plot armor, where it's like no matter how dire the situation is, like the hero hasn't lost yet, and then just out of nowhere Larry burst in demanding to testify because apparently he failed to, I mean, you've seen him both the previous days, but he failed to mention to you that he witnessed the murder. That he was there the night of the murder. Now, he didn't witness it, but he was there the night of. So, like, you're asking him all these questions about these events that have happened, and at no point did he say, oh, yeah, I was there. Because, I mean, I think he said, like, at one point was already gone. But all of a sudden he wants to be like saving you or whatever, and Karma's like, nah, you can't do it, dog. The judge has already ruled, but the judge is like, well, I mean, I just want to make sure we get the truth out or whatever. So he basically gives like a short recess and basically allows Larry to testify to potentially get the truth out there. And how did you guys feel about like between the guilty verdict and then like Larry coming in, of all people too, it being Larry, like the person that is your basically client's life is in the balance, and like you have to rely on Larry. How did you guys feel about those two sections? And I'll start with you, Greg.
I don't know. I thought it was kind of weird how they gave the verdict and then they're like, nah, actually, let's think this over again. It was kind of like, to me, it came off kind of weird that they did it, but I guess it's just to add to the suspense. But then having to depend on Larry is also a pretty uneasy thing because it doesn't really come off as like the person that you want to depend on. But yeah, I think it was, I think the way that they handled that part kind of came off as weird and a little anticlimactic, I guess. But again, I'm still kind of in it for the ride at this point.
What about you, Trevor? How'd you feel about having to, between the guilty verdict and having to rely on Larry?
I mean, I felt the same way as Phoenix Wright. I was just like, we've already lost this case. Like, what? How else can Larry hurt it?
Damn, you got no faith in Larry?
I didn't at all.
And then I don't know. How about you, Dante? Like, they've done this a bunch of times where like something happens and it looks like all is lost, and then like, oh well, this thing happens, because I mean it happened I think in the case previously where all of a sudden you hear an objection and you're like, I didn't say objection. The judge is like, what happened? And it's like, Edgeworth on the other side objecting to his own witness. So like we've dealt with like this suspenseful moment where the case, all is not lost. And how did that make you feel? Like, is it exciting when you know what's going to happen? Or
I mean, it's funny. Like, the entire series is literally like Turnabout Trial. That's like the Japanese translation. So this trope does happen a lot, but it's almost like a 90s cartoon where it's got to be dramatic in some way, and they do a pretty good job. And I have an appreciation for this one in specific just because once you find out more details about the boatkeeper and Von Karma, it kind of makes sense why this entire section, I don't think you actually present any evidence. It's just literally you losing the entire time. And that all makes sense in the grand scheme of things in Case 4.
Yeah. And me personally, like, I kind of like what Trevor said. I was like, oh, damn, I got to rely on Larry. GG's. Like, this dude, he's guilty. Edgeworth is going to be found guilty because he is... I think, like, straight up, I do think Larry might be one of my least favorite characters in this game. Just because of, like... I just don't see... Not that Phoenix Wright is put together, but I just don't see how they became friends. Or, like, I mean... How they are still friends.
Like, Larry's a terrible person, but I think he's a great character.
How do you feel about Larry, Trevor?
So, if Edgeworth is like Seto Kaiba, Larry is like, what's his name, Eddie?
I thought it was Joey.
Joey, yeah.
I don't know, like... I just don't like Larry, dude. Like, like, ultimately, like, it's a good thing, this part, but I know going in, he's the character is the lovable loser, right? So, like, he's super unreliable, he's super absent-minded and clumsy, and all these different, like, tropes of, like, these type of characters, but, like, when you need him to come through, like, the most he does... Like, just out of sheer, like, no, through no like fault of his own, or not because like it's just like, oh, it just happened that he was in the right place at the right time, or he said the right thing. Like he totally wasn't going for it. How do you feel about Larry Gregg?
Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling that everybody else does about him. Kind of, you don't really, you can't. I don't know. I guess I can't really see how they have this type of relationship that they have, or how even Phoenix is still kind of like associating with him. But and it goes back to the other thing of you don't really feel very confident in anything that he can do as far as like giving you reliable information or kind of helping you like put together a solid case.
Gotcha. So you end up after the recess, you go in and you cross-examine Larry, and this is another weird or whatever. It's like he's supposed to be helping you unveil the truth of what really happened, and then he tells you his testimony, and it's he needs to clarify on certain things, and you kind of point out some inconsistencies in what he's saying, and he gets another opportunity to testify, which is weird because at that point, like, if I'm the judge, I'm like, hey man, look, you came in here trying to say what actually happened. You can't be coming in here and then wasting our time and having to clear your story up on the stand. We just had this damn recess. Get it together, like that's how I would have been. But I mean, it's a game. But I don't know. I'm pointing
out. You find out that he wasn't wrong. He was right. Lotto was right. Everybody was right.
I mean, go. I need some more, man. Go ahead. You go ahead. You got this.
Okay, so essentially the crux of his testimony was the time the gunshot was heard. And he heard a gunshot, and then not too long after, he hears a DJ on the radio say, it's about to be Christmas Eve. Whereas in the evidence, you've already seen that the murder or the time of death is just after Christmas, or at least I think the time that the photo got taken from Lotta's camera was right after Christmas. So now there's 2 gunshots on the lake, and you're kind of just penciling out what exactly happened, because Larry heard a gunshot, Lotta heard a gunshot, and they were about 25 minutes apart.
Yeah. So you're going off of both of these testimonies, and you're like, oh, well, both of these people potentially are telling the truth. So we just need to figure out what happened when this gunshot happened versus what happened when this gunshot happened. So basically, you kind of have to say oh, well, that could potentially mean that Hammond was killed at the first gunshot and not the second one, because I think there was already evidence that pointed out that Miles was on the boat when the second gunshot went off. So now it's up to you. I think the case or that day ends with you having to figure out okay, how can we make sure that prove that the murder was the first gunshot before Miles was on the boat and not the second one when he was on. And also, we need to figure out what's up with this boat shop caretaker. What's his deal, right?
And that's where the day 2 trial ends, pretty much. Phoenix deduces that the whole second gunshot thing was to create a witness, just because by firing twice, you would have caught everybody's attention the first time. So everybody's going to be looking at the lake. So that's why they do it a second time, or at least that's Phoenix's deduction. And then I think, is it at this point that he accuses the boatkeeper of being the murderer?
Yeah. And so, at that point, the judge wants the boatkeeper, boat shop rental caretaker, whatever, all those words, to be brought back in to testify. And the bailiff interrupts the trial and basically says, "Oh, the dude is gone. He's not in the courthouse anymore." So then the judge ends up suspending the trial for the day, and there's a search warrant issued for the caretaker. So at that point, the trial is over, suspended, and so that day is over. And you kind of, I think Edgeworth tells Wright he has this recurring nightmare about basically the events that happened on the elevator for the DL6 incident. And he basically kind of says like, okay, my dad and the bailiff were going at it. Yanni Yogi were going at it. Yanni drops his gun. I pick up the gun and I want them to stop fighting. So I just throw the gun and it hits one of them or hits a wall, and then it discharges a bullet. And then I hear somebody scream in agony, and then I black out. And so like those are like his recollection of this recurring nightmare he has. That's his recollection of the events. And he's been having that throughout his entire life for the past 15 years since that day. So,
how did you guys feel about that? Did you think that that's actually how things went down at that point?
I figured it could. I don't know. It just seemed too weird for me to believe that it really happened like that. I think it was just Miles just kind of being hard on himself. But yeah, I don't really, I wasn't thinking that was what really happened.
Yeah, I definitely didn't believe that was what happened because, I mean, who throws a gun?
I mean, he was like 10. He's like, what, 4th grade?
Well, he mentioned something about he picked it up and threw it because he was scared of it or something like that.
Bro, you never play Super Hot?
I thought he just picked it up to like and throw it to just like, you guys stop arguing. Like I thought like it was more like he was being naive and not necessarily like he didn't know, like it was just something to pick up to like stop the fight. I don't think he knew it was like a gun or anything like that. Or maybe he just didn't think of it like this is a killing, instrument. This is just like something I can throw to like make a loud noise, assuming it didn't discharge, that would make them come to their senses.
That's fair. I totally thought that's how it went down the first time I played through it.
I thought that's how it went down. I knew that we were going to figure out more details, but I was like, okay, I could see that being a thing. But
so,
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're into
the final day.
The final day investigation. And this is where you're at your office, you talk to Maya and Larry, and this is kind of where you find out the backstory between Larry, Phoenix, and Edgeworth, where he transferred into school, Edgeworth transferred into the school, and then one day, like, I think Phoenix was either sick or, like, he was not at PE when everybody else was at PE.
No, it wasn't him. It was Larry, wasn't?
Well, that's the punchline.
Oh.
Well, so Larry was sick, but then Phoenix didn't go to PE when everybody else was at PE. And during that PE session, Edgeworth had his lunch money for the month stolen or whatever. And pretty much everybody in the class, including the teacher, all said Nick was guilty, and they also held a mock trial as an example. So what do you guys think about this?
Man, them little kids went in. Those little kids were like, he did it! He did it! They were going in on Phoenix, and Phoenix was like, no, I didn't do it, I swear. All that, and them kids were not having it. Jury of his peers found him guilty.
What kind of teacher is this?
She's kind of a monster, isn't she? She's like, hey man, everybody else says you did it. Why don't you just fess up?
Hey man, teachers nowadays are having slave auctions and stuff like that to teach lessons, so I wouldn't put it past nobody.
But pretty much you find out that Edgeworth, the person who had his lunch money stolen, is the
$35 too.
It's a lot of money. Yeah.
In the 4th grade, man. $35 for lunch.
He takes up after his dad's example and decides to defend Phoenix in this mock fourth grade trial. And then somewhere in the process, Larry also joins in and says, hey, you guys should really stop bullying this dude. He probably didn't do it. And that's how they became best friends forever until the DL6 incident happened and Edgeworth had to move away. Let's see. Marqus, you got it for a second?
Sure. So, you go back to the, excuse me, go back to the lake, and, you go to, everybody's looking for there's a lot of police officers around. They're looking for the, boat rental guy, and, he's still, like, missing. And, you move around and you end up getting, you get into the boat shop. He didn't lock the boat shop. And so you go in and the parrot is still there, and you can kind of talk to the parrot, and, you can open up the, he has a safe there, and you can open up the safe, and you find a letter in there that's very ominous, saying, "Get revenge on Miles Edgeworth." And that's very, very weird. And so you end up returning to Miles. And Maya, initially, she starts talking to Edgeworth about the class trial, but he doesn't even remember. But then you kind of bring out the, what's up?
No, I was just going to say that letter also details, like, literally everything about that crime up to, like, hey, shoot once now, and then in 25 minutes later, also do another shot.
Oh yeah, it kind of lays out the groundwork for like the case that you're defending. Excuse me. And so you go to Miles and you talk to him about the letter, and he kind of I think in the letter it also says now is the time to get revenge on the two men who ruined your life, and so you end up finding out it probably means Edgeworth and Hammond, and then you're like, oh, that's when you finally have the revelation, like, oh, is this caretaker actually this long lost bailiff, this court bailiff, Yanni Yogi? And then so you end up asking him, you ask him about the incident some more, and he gives some more backstory, and you find out more about the DL6 incident, and so then, he tells you what he knows, which is very similar to that dream that he has. It's essentially just the dream that he has consistently recurring. So then you're like, okay, well, maybe we can go to Grossberg, the other attorney, and kind of find out any more information on this case. And you end up asking him about you mentioned him, you mentioned to him about Miles' dream, and you ask him information about Gregory Edgeworth and the spirit medium, and you present the letter, the letter from his safe, and he recognizes it as, doesn't he recognize it as Karma's handwriting? The letter, it's a handwritten letter, and he recognizes it as Karma's handwriting.
I think so.
And so at that point, it's like, oh, like things are unraveling, like at least are unveiling themselves for me, because I'm like, oh no, he did it, like, just thinking like, oh, this is how Karma gets down. Okay, I see this. I see you. And Dante, you wanna?
I was just gonna say it's really interesting because at this point, Karma doesn't seem like he has any dog in this fight, so you're just asking yourself, like, why would he want all of this to happen, all of these tragedies?
Yeah, the only thing that we know about Karma is, like, at this point, he has a perfect record. He's never had any strikes against him, and he doesn't like when he's not in control. So, like, the only time you quote-unquote see him sweat has been the time when Larry showed up, for the trial. So like Karma is very strict and like not strict and rigid, but like he likes to be in control of things. So like he was at a disadvantage when Larry came up because that was not something that he prepared for. So he was way more lax in the testimony and just like objecting to what was going on because he didn't have the time to prepare for it. So that was like one of his moments of weakness. Because like as Dante had said, like he was killing you that entire trial. Like it looked like all was lost. And the moment there's some like random outside factor that he can't account for, that's when that's when the truth came out. You know, that's when some more information was finally able to be uncovered. So that's like the one chink in his armor is things that he can't control. So that kind of knowing that about him, and then finding out that he had this he did this handwritten letter to Yanni Yogi at this point. You know, like it's revealed that the caretaker is Yanni Yogi, and or you assume or you it like
It's
evidence
implied heavily
suggests,
by this point.
Yeah, evidence heavily suggests that this is Yanni Yogi. So you basically are trying to get as much information as you can. So you go to Grossberg. Grossberg recognizes the handwriting, and then you find out that Karma didn't leave the trial. Like, so you find out that Karma was the prosecutor in the DL6 case, or I'm sorry, in the case. And this is going to be a little confusing. So the DL6 incident is the incident that happened with the actual killing and the elevator and all the earthquake and all that stuff. The case prior to that was its own separate case, and in that case, it was Gregory Edgeworth being the defense attorney for whoever against Karma. And even though Edgeworth lost, he put a chink in Karma's unscarred or his armor and basically revealed that, Karma has been illegally or like not getting evidence the right way or something. He's doing something he shouldn't be doing. And I think Karma gets a warning. Like Karma is using faulty evidence. And it's the only penalty Von Karma has ever got in his entire career. And so it was a huge point of pride for him that he had an unscathed record, and this was the one tick on his record. So he almost had a grudge with he did have a grudge with Edgeworth. So
yeah, and you find out that he was flustered, and Grossberg also mentions it's like this was the one time in his entire career that he took a vacation, and he was gone for several months after that trial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think what they were thinking at this point was it's very likely that Von Karma will bring up the DL6 case in the court, and Edgeworth will probably end up having to plead guilty for the murder of his dad, because as far as he knows, what he recollects and what he sees in this dream, he threw the gun and the gun went off, and I mean, there was one gunshot, or like there was evidence of a single gunshot being fired, and his dad died. So you Phoenix Wright don't think that he killed his father, and so Grossberg says there's a file of the incident in the criminal affairs department. So you end up having to go back to the records room, and you end up going to the records room and going to the cabinet filed labeled unsolved cases and with evidence, and in it you see the DL6 file is empty, and then you turn around and Karma's there, and you end up talking to him a little bit, and he basically he is going to bring up the DL6 case tomorrow, and he's sure that he knows that Edgeworth is going to admit his guilt because he's been feeling very emo about this lately. So you show Karma the letter that you got in the safe, and he mentions, I told Yanni Yogi to burn it after reading it, and before you argue, he knocks you out and Maya out with a stun gun, or he tases you guys, but right before that, Maya is able to grab something from him. You don't know what it is, and then when you come to, you find out that not only did Karma steal the letter you presented him, but he took all the DL6. He had all the DL6 case files with him, the evidence, and you find out that the thing that Maya was able to grab was like a bullet, the bullet that was fired in from the gun. And so you're thinking, oh, I got the bullet that fatally wounded, or that came from the gun that supposedly Miles shot. So that ends that day investigation, right? Am I missing anything?
I just want to know what everybody thought about getting stunned.
Bruh, is that not assault? Like, why was this not reported?
That was the thing I was thinking. I'm like, yo, so nobody's gonna say anything? Like, y'all just gonna let him cook like this? Like, all right.
The crazy thing is like, this is like the third straight case where somebody tried to like lay hands on you. So like, in case 2, that dude straight up punches you in the face. You know, red white. And then the third case, D. Vasquez's goons are about to jump you, and then that's when Gumshoe shows up. So like, nobody technically lays hands on you. But in this one, you get hit when you get tased, and it's just like, man, like being a lawyer is tough.
He stays catching fades. He's like, well, can't do anything. They caught me slipping.
I did not see that coming the first time. I was like, a stun gun?
Hey man, by any means, I try to get these files and get out of here. Hey, he plays dirty.
Also, Phoenix is a moron for, like, would you confront somebody with, like, hey, I got this letter saying that you pretty much did this murder?
Nope. But yeah, you wanna kick off the final trial, Dante?
Yeah, as soon as, let's see. So, the final day of trial, let me get down here. Right, Yogi. So pretty much the first thing you do is out him as the boat keeper as Yanni Yogi. And what do you guys think about his transformation where he kind of like buffs up and he's like, oh.
Man, F this dude.
He gets like super serious, like his chest grows like a DBZ character for a second. And then he's like, oh yeah, I pretty much remember everything. But Robert Hammond, the defense attorney that got him off the hook 15 years ago for murdering Gregory, pretty much he defamed Yanni Yogi in a certain way. Like, he said, oh, he can't remember anything and he was mentally unstable. And because of that, he lost his job. His girlfriend, Polly, committed suicide. And yeah, he just pretty much couldn't get his life together after that, from what I remember. And let's see. Is it at this point where he's declared the actual killer of the first case, or the case that's happening in modern time?
I mean, at this point, it's kind of hard to say because, like, it's hard to get any type of evidence because, like, supposedly he worked at after the case, he worked at a chemical plant and he burned his fingerprints off in a chemical accident. So, like, there was no way you could get prints on him to see even if he was at the crime scene. So, I think.
Oh yeah, this is the part where Von Karma just jokes and he's like, "You're out of witnesses. There's no way you're gonna like get any more relevant information on this case. What are you gonna do? Cross-examine the dude's parrot?"
And then Wright's like, "That's not a bad idea." And then he challenges him and basically says, "Objection. Hey, if you suggested this thing, the prosecution suggested this thing, I might as well take him up on it. So you freaking cross-examine a parrot in this game."
Like, what else do you have to lose at this point, right?
I mean, you have Larry. I mean, he got to be better than Larry, right?
Hang on. So y'all weren't planning on putting that parrot on the stand the moment you heard him say DL6?
I just wanted to talk to the parrot more. He didn't have to go on the stage. I could have talked to him outside the case.
I did not see this coming. No iota of my brain said I would be cross-examining a parrot at the end of Ace Attorney.
I thought it was freaking awesome. I thought it was, and it was funny too, because like the parrot only responds to certain like a certain voice cue or whatever, or like statement. So like anytime you asked it anything, it just squawked and said, "My name is Polly" or whatever. It was only when Maya asked certain things that it actually gave answers. And like I don't know, I thought it was a super clever way of showing like here's this harebrained scheme that you thought is a last ditch effort and it's not going to pan out. And then, it actually accidentally was the smartest thing you could have done. And I just thought it was like super fitting, and I thought it was super. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was like, oh man, that's crazy. You get to cross-examine a freaking parrot.
Like if Giant Bomb had a website back then, like this is quite possibly one of the best moments of 2004 for me, and I could just imagine on their list saying best moment cross-examining a parrot, Phoenix Wright, Ace Attorney. But going on to what actually happens in the case, you're cross-examining the parrot, and essentially you get two tidbits from him that link Yanni Yogi to DL6. One, the safe number is 1228, the day that the incident happened. And then when you ask Polly what's his name, Polly, you find out that was Yanni Yogi's girlfriend who committed suicide way back then. So with those two pieces of information, you're able to link Yanni, the boat keeper, directly back to DL6. And then I think this is when Yanni actually takes the stage. He admits that he is who you think he is, Yanni Yogi. And he also explains that he killed Hammond for revenge. And he wants revenge on Edgeworth, and he's pretty sure that's still going to happen. And that's kind of the ominous thing that happens after you get this not guilty verdict for Edgeworth on the first case. Marqus?
I'm sorry, say that last part. Your mic would cut off or messed up for me.
My bad. So essentially you get a not guilty verdict for Miles Edgeworth. And I think at this point is when he actually says, hold it, Edgeworth himself. And he's like, no, this trial isn't over yet.
Oh, and yeah, this is the part where Karma's prediction, or like he kind of said like, oh, well, we're going to bring up the DL6 tomorrow. And this is the part where Edgeworth basically kind of confesses, and he basically explains his nightmares to the court and his guilt. And basically Karma wants to try Edgeworth for the DL6 incident before the statute of limitations runs out, this is the day of. This is 15 years to the day of the initial date. So the judge takes grants the court a 5-minute recess to think about it. And then basically at this point, during the recess, Edgeworth he's like, my bad, Phoenix. Like, I appreciate the amount of time and energy you expended in getting me off the hook for the trial, but this is something that I've had to atone for the past 15 years or something like that, right? Like, he's basically hyping himself up to be guilty of murder or something. I don't know. But you're not U.S. Phoenix, right? You're kind of just pouring over all the evidence that you have in regards to the DL6 incident, because you're basically like, like, how can I prove that this thing didn't happen, or this didn't happen how Miles thinks it happened? So it's kind of interesting because like one case ends and then you just basically pick up in the. Or let me rephrase that. So case 4 is basically 2 cases in one, where it's like you have this ongoing or this current case, and you have a case that's related to it that happened 15 years in the past, and now it's just kind of like they kind of collide, and you kind of end one, but the other one keeps going. And because Karma is like, hey, this is the last day we can do it, we might as well, you know what I'm saying? And the judge is like, I got you, dog. And it's just kind of weird to me. I thought that was kind of just like, damn, like, let this man, like, it's been 15 years. Like, how you gonna try him on the last day? That's kind of messed up. But that kind of shows you how karma is.
He did it to himself.
I mean, you're right, but I think karma kind of like he knew. I guess because of like his time. I honestly I don't know. Like they have a history together. I mean, he was the person that trained Edgeworth, but it was just kind of weird that it was just like he knew this was going to happen before you were willing to accept it. It was really weird.
I'm still trying to figure out why Miles is just so bent on just trying to blame himself for this.
Dude, and it kills the character for me. I hate that about him. Like, he went from being like super confident and cocky and so like just self sure of himself to just being like, woe is me. I killed my dad. I'm willing to accept the responsibility. And it's just like, bruh, like, not even a case ago, you were like going back at it with me where you're saying this could have happened, but did it? Like you just proved that it was possible. You didn't prove that it happened, and like you just have this dream, and you're like, that's what happened. I sure did shoot my dad, even though I don't remember no evidence about it or like no like single event of it. I just hey, this happened, and we're gonna have to take it as face value because that's how I feel, and it's just like so. Almost out of character for what I had come to know as the Miles Edgeworth in the case 2 and case 3. He just does like a whole 180 in case 4, and I wasn't here for it as a fan of the character, and like I said, it kind of turned me off of the character. But that's just me. I guess you want to bring it back up DL6 trial when they get back out of recess, Dante. You want to pick it up from there?
Yeah, that's fine. So, pretty much, to make a long story short, the rest of the trial is about this elevator. You're on this elevator. It's Miles Edgeworth, his dad Gregory, and Janie Yogi. And immediately after the trial where Gregory had the mark made against Karma, him, his son, and Janie Yogi are on the elevator. An earthquake happens, and I think the power goes out as well. Correct? Okay, I'm going to assume the power went out.
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Okay. And what Phoenix Wright ends up finding is that there's only one gunshot in Gregory Edgeworth, but you find out that there's also another bullet lodged in the elevator door. Or at least there's a break in the glass in the elevator door or something like that. So you find out that Edgeworth couldn't have killed his dad because the bullet he shot, man, I'm trying to think about how they differentiate between the bullets in this case.
I think it's like the fingerprint that the gun leaves when it leaves the chamber, right? So like that's almost like the Great Mouse Detective. There's like a groove that the bullet has when it exits the chamber. So like you can kind of tell if a gun shot the bullet because it has these certain grooves that will line up to the chamber of the gun.
Well, it was the same gun though.
Yeah, but there was ballistic markings, and
I think the way they differentiated the bullets was there wasn't one that was found inside of the elevator. So one had to come in through the glass in order for it to...
That's right. So you find out that when Edgeworth threw the gun, a bullet did fire, but the bullet that he fired was not in the elevator. So that leaves like the question, where's the bullet? And this is kind of where Phoenix Wright goes into his... I'm trying to think about the best way to describe this. This is kind of like this ultimate epiphany anime moment where he's like, oh my god, every part of the universe is coming together. So Von Karma
hate this moment.
You hate it?
Like, I know it's a video game, but it's just like when he has these moments, it's not apparent to me. It when like this happens, it's like it's not a game anymore. It's just me watching something unfold. And like I guess maybe I shouldn't see it as like I'm playing a game as I'm creating this I'm like being a part of an anime or something like that, because it's just like he comes to some type of realization that's so far fetched and like completely like it seems far fetched anyways, and it ends up being like what actually happened. But like this case, both the cases that we do in this part, case 4, case 5, it's so far fetched in comparison to the other. It's just like, bro, you are really reaching right now, and like, what are you talking about? But it ends up being like plausible enough, I guess, is what, like, it ends up being the truth, but it's plausible enough or believable enough that everybody runs with it. But it's just like, how did you even get there? Like, what were you even thinking? Because it's just like he'll have a vision of Mia saying, "Think outside the box, Phoenix," and then he's like, "Oh man, that bullet came from Mars." Like that's like that's kind of how it happens. It seems like. Do you feel that way, Trevor?
Yeah, and it kind of made me think of how like they probably designed these cases and working backwards and creating something that you would automatically or that you wouldn't think of necessarily, and then working backwards from there, obscuring the evidence so it makes it look like that could never happen. Because every time you find a new piece of evidence, it doesn't lead you towards that path. It leads you to, well, maybe something else happened, but then you ended up finding out that the truth was different.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I like the game, and I like what we've played, and like I like the final result. But it's just, and I agree with you. They probably do work backwards, or like I don't know. Like I'm assuming they work backwards, but it's just like so crazy. The leap. It's almost like a leap of logic to be like, oh well, Phoenix Wright is the only one on this level to even fathom that this thing can happen, and now it's his job to explain to these mere mortals that he used his third eye to see this crime happen.
Bruh, could you imagine how lit that courtroom was when he's like, yo, bring out the metal detector?
I mean, it's just like, I don't know, man.
I'm just thinking that super hot fire gif.
Yeah!
Really good.
That's exactly it. He's just like, he says something and people are like, what? And he lets it settle for a bit. Then he explains, and then the crowd goes like, the judge has to, like, the crowd starts murmuring and all this, and the judge has to like order, like, y'all need to pipe down or whatever. And then it's just like, it is just like the super hot fire gif.
And then he's
100%.
Also incompetent like every moment before that too.
That's what I'm saying. It's just like such a like leap of logic where it's like I could imagine that happening with a Miles, being like that. But it's, with it being Phoenix, it's just like, man, he's so green, and this is like his third case, and it's just like, he's so confident, able to do this, and I don't know, like he's obviously a prodigy, but it's just like, man, like what's going on?
Say what you will, I freaking love the end of this case. Like the fact that Von Karma got shot. I mean, okay, so all this is going to sound insane when you hear it, but Von Karma happened to be walking past the elevator as the power was going off, or no. The power came back on. The elevator got to the bottom floor or whatever. They were about to find the bodies, but the gun that Miles threw dislodged a bullet into Von Karma's shoulder. After that happened, he got struck with pain for a little bit, got really angry, opened the elevator door, noticed Gregory, the guy who just like messed up his perfect record, in there, and decided to shoot him.
And yeah, he got his revenge, and then he didn't want to have any type of, I guess you could say, paper trail or whatever. So the entire time, that 15 years, he's left that bullet inside of him. He never got it surgically removed because he didn't want any evidence of it having happened. And so when he took his quote-unquote vacation, that was him like recovering from being shot. So like that was why Phoenix Wright suggested, hey, pull out this metal detector and run it over Von Karma, because he totally has a metal bullet in his arm still. And it
It's
was
so
crazy.
crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Oh man, dressed his own wound, like had to like stitch it up and all like that. I don't know. That's crazy.
And it's just like shows how much of a perfectionist, not even perfect, I don't even know the word to say it, but like he's like so doesn't want to be taken off the pedestal that he's on of being like a perfect thing and like infallible, that like he didn't want to one admit that he had gotten shot or anything like that, and then on top of that like he just left this bullet in because like, oh, like of course like the one scar on his record was because of Gregory, and then the one quote unquote, I mean, I don't know if this is true, but the scar on his body is because of his son. And it's even crazy that he just like, not only did that happen, but then he trained the dude's son. Like he trained his son like after the fact. Like this guy, like it was almost like, you know, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. And it was just like the guy that he fatally shot, and like the person that put the only mark on his record, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna teach his son the game. I'm gonna teach his son the game. And it's just like, what, like, what's going on? I don't know. Like I really, really, really like Von Karma. I don't like 100% understand his motives and like his like why he did what he did, but like I like the character a lot.
There's a little bit more into that in the second game without saying too much.
Oh, he's
But
in the second game?
no, but you find out more about Edgeworth and stuff, and kind of like it's a really long story of revenge and him taking his rivals, or not even rival, but you know, Gregory's son, and then training him in the opposite art was kind of a thing.
And this sounds like some Star Wars stuff.
Kinda.
Ultimately, though, Edgeworth was found not guilty in not only the original OG case, but also this DL6 case. So he beat the cases, and I think this is the end of the the GBA version of the game, right? So there's only 4 cases. So I believe like the way that the way the story wraps up is so Edgeworth, you know, he thanks Wright, and Larry ends up giving Edgeworth an envelope containing the $38, and you guys kind of find out that, oh, 15 years ago, it was actually Larry that stole his money, and I guess Edgeworth had deduced that already. He knew all along, but he couldn't see why Larry stood up for Wright, so I don't know. It was just like some tender moment that the three of them had. And then Lotta Hart, she was at the court, and she took a photo of the crew. So it was Larry, Phoenix, Miles, Maya, and Gumshoe. And she later stated that there was also a ghost in the picture. And you can see on the far edge, it's kind of like a very approving looking Mia, like her like ghostly apparition or whatever. And then so that's how that day ends. And then the story ends kind of in an interesting way. Like credits are, this is during the
credit scenes are really good.
Yeah, the credits in this game are awesome. So like, you know, they'll say, oh, produced by, directed by, or, you know, developed by, blah blah blah. But in between some of those things, they'll show like little blurbs of like, okay, here's this character, they're talking to you, and kind of just giving you a little bit of background or like story about what's going on. So you kind of find out that you wake up to a note from Maya, and she left to do some spirit training because she was kind of bummed out that I think this entire case 4, throughout the case, she was trying to talk to Mia, but she hadn't been practicing her training, so she was not able to do it. So like she wanted to be able to do that more easily. So she was gonna go training. So she goes to the train station to head home to go to start training, and basically you meet her at the train station before she leaves. She kind of is like down on herself because she didn't help at all. But then you point out, or Wright points out, that when we were in the records room right before we got tased or, you know, stun gunned, you got that bullet from Karma, and that helped us out. and then she kind of like tearfully gets on the train and says when she comes back, she promises she'll be a better medium. And yeah, like you kind of catch up and see some little blurbs of stuff with some of the other characters too. But like I think hers was the most important, or like I guess because I guess she's going to be a big character in the second game.
Yeah, I'd say that hers and Edgeworth are the most like relevant to the story.
But I mean, you during this credits, you get to see like a lot of like Lotta's in it. The bellboy from Case 2's in it. Like I mean, you're seeing a lot of characters. So.
I think you see everybody at least once.
Yeah. But
we got to play pretty hot and fast with this Case 5.
Just a quick rewinder. How'd you guys overall feel about this Case 4? Like, assuming like we were playing the GBA version, like, do you feel this was a good ending or like for the game? Were you satisfied with what was going on and where it was left off at?
Yeah, I think at this point I'm kind of. I don't think that I'm looking for anything else out of it at this point, so I would say I'm pretty satisfied with how it ended.
What about you, Trevor?
Yeah, there was a lot more character development than I thought there would be, simply because like the cases that you play in are really close to home. Like somebody you know is involved in all the cases, so a lot of the characters you're dealing with, get a chance to appear more than once, and so there's a lot of development there.
I think it's also really cool how pretty much all the cases, maybe bar 3 a little bit, is really just culminating to Case 4 in a large way. Like DL6 is introduced really early. You get the whole spirit medium thing pretty early. And everything's kind of building off of itself, even with like Larry and Phoenix in the first case.
Yeah, there's a big through line between like from the beginning of the game all the way to this point. So it was kind of cool to have almost like a self-contained story with it. Like it was self-contained onto this game as far as we know, but it kind of that line ran through multiple different cases and stuff, so you got a little bit of information as the time went on and everything. So that was cool. I felt like it left off in a good spot, and I felt like it was a kind of what Trevor said. This case taught you how to play the game, or like prepared you for the game the best. So it was good that like they ratcheted up the difficulty on the last case, quote unquote last case. So like I definitely would have felt accomplished, or like I would have felt good where the game ended. But luckily or not luckily, or I guess depending on how you feel about it, with the trilogy, we get the fifth case, which is Rise from Ashes, and this is like Dante has stated many times. This was released. I think the way he said it was there was 3 games that came out on GBA: Ace Attorney 1, 2, and 3. This version of the game was ported to the first game was ported to DS, and they added the 5th case, and that was supposed to be like a here's what to expect with the DS version when Ace Attorney 4 comes out. So this was kind of like not even a proof of concept, but like a would you call it like a expansion pack, or I forgot.
It almost feels like a demo of what's to come.
Yeah, but this case is way longer. Way longer. Let me say it one more time. Way longer than this is like twice as long. This case took me twice as long as Case 4, which was Case 4 was already pretty long. I think Case 4 was like a 5-6 hour case, and this case took me 11 hours, 11 and a half hours.
It's like the length of the entire game.
Basically, yeah, it's the length of the entire game. So we did our best, fam. I think of the 4 of us, I think me and Dante were the only 2 that beat Case 5. I believe Trevor was about 2/3. Well, I mean, he was on the end of the second day, but if I'm being honest,
I was at the end of the 3rd day. Because there's 4 days.
You were at the day 3 investigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah. So Trevor was still like, he still had a third of the game to go. Like, he was 2/3 of the way through the game, and Greg had only finished the first day, so he was probably only like an hour and a half in or something, 2 hours in. So we are not going to be talking too much about the story for this one. I think we will just focus on, just for time's sake too, we would just be focusing on some of the things they kind of introduce. I guess as far as the case goes, the only thing that you need to know, oh, I guess I'll introduce it. So I think it's set 2 months after the last case. Phoenix Wright is brought out of a self-imposed break to investigate a case involving a friend of his mentor from law school who has already confessed to a murder. So, like, this case is almost brought about as being like a parallel to the Mia and Maya relationship. So you meet this girl, Emma Sky, who's a 16-year-old girl. She basically claims that her sister was found of murdering a detective. Her sister is the chief prosecutor, Lana Sky. So it already draws parallels to Maya and Mia's relationship. And they basically, it almost, at least your relationship with Emma, almost mimics your relationship with Mia. She's a relatively young high school / teenage girl. She is not. She's almost there for comic relief. She's science investigator is her title. So she's not a medium, but she's very scientific and has a lot of things to help you find evidence. But she is very Phoenix Wright thinks outside the box in court. This girl thinks outside the box in life. So she has the most like off the wall reasonings for why something is the way it is. But ultimately, like a lot of the same characters are involved. I mean, you're Phoenix Wright. Miles is the prosecutor. And Detective Gumshoe is in this as well. But there's a cast of characters in this. There's like six characters, I think. Yeah. So there's they are some characters. I will say that. Like, how many of the characters did you meet, Greg? Like 2 or 3 of them?
Yeah, I think 3 of them. It was the cowboy dude.
What a character.
Yeah, so you meet a cowboy, you meet the 2 Sky sisters, you meet the chief of police, a lowly cop, and then you meet Meekins, and a lunch lady, former detective called Lunch Lady. And I will say, not to get too much into the characters, but the lunch lady is probably... I couldn't stand the lunch lady. She was so annoying. How did you guys feel about Angel? Her name is Angel Star.
Hey, she got snacks on snacks, though.
She got snacks on snacks. It's just like, anytime you talk to her, she basically hung out around the courthouse or whatever, the parking lot, and she just handed out lunches to people, and that was her job. And she just, like, I don't know, she was very annoying. She was like a mix between Miss April, the very seductive secretary, and for me anyways, a mix between that and the what's it called? Yanni Yogi. It was just like a combination of those 2 personalities.
Slow animation
with an annoying personality, and it was just like both those things I couldn't stand about those characters, and they just combined them and it made it this character, and I was like, I couldn't stand having to investigate her, or excuse me, talk to her and then cross-examine her. It was so frustrating, and it's just like, oh my god.
She served you up an extra helping of squid rolls.
Yeah. And then, let's see, some of the other characters. So Meekins was a lowly police officer. He was a witness all these characters were witnesses and, like, you know, figures that you need to talk to. But he's like a super incompetent, like, he damn near looks like a high schooler, but he's a cop. And he just was, like, super bad and super green. And he was pretty interesting. Almost think of like a
cop version of Gumshoe.
I was going to say a cop version of Larry. he was like a worse version of Larry, right? Or it seemed like
I can see that.
any, he was wrong place, wrong time all the time, and he just didn't know what he was doing.
Why was this animation like so much more cartoonish than everybody else's?
I have no idea. I think they were just trying to show like how, I don't know.
I think, like, even going to his character portrait, it's a lot different than the other ones. It looks almost like a cardboard cutout in some ways.
He just looks like those kind of kids that are like bullied in high school, because they made him look super young. Like he wasn't old enough to be a cop, but he was somehow, and he was just the most incompetent cop. And like it was really, it was interesting. And then one of the other witnesses, James Marshall, the cowboy guy Greg was talking about, to me, he had the best theme in the game. Oh my God. He had like a Western, like he was dressed up like a Western, and he talked like he was a cowboy. So he was always talking about rodeo, and he always called, what's her name? Emma Bambina or whatever. And he was talking about 6-shooters, and he wasn't good with technology, and he wore like a poncho and like a sombrero, like a cowboy hat. And like his 2 animations, like he would cycle between was like shaving his beard with he had like a super like scraggly beard or whatever, or 5 o'clock shadow, if you will, and he had like a full ass Bowie knife that he was like, scraping his chin with, and his other animation was taking a swig from his flask. And man, like how do you guys feel about this character? He's not my favorite character, but he has the best theme to me, and I did like his character, though it wasn't my favorite, but it was up there.
From the limited time I had with him, I thought it was pretty cool. I dug his animations. I think he's one of the cooler characters in the game, to be honest.
Trevor?
He's alright.
You sound like a hater.
He's alright. No, I mean, I didn't too much care for like his theme, because at first, like, I don't know, he had one of those Western vibes where he was like the Native American who became the sheriff or something like that.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know. It was just weird.
To be fair, I will say that I don't think you got far enough. Well, my turnaround on the character is like you're almost to that point. Because before then I was like, this character's kind of lame. He's kind of like I don't really get why they decided to put this type of character in the game, because everybody else is like, it's modern times, and this dude is like, he's back in the 1800s or just like the frontier times or whatever, and like he didn't really add anything, I felt like, besides that godlike theme. But when you find out his motivation for why certain things transpired in this case, then I kind of like had a turnaround on his personality. And like at that point, he's been around for so long that his like cowboyisms didn't really grate on me anymore, and they were kind of endearing in a way. And I don't know, I ended up liking the character. So yeah. How about you, Dante? How do you feel about Officer Marshall?
I have a genuinely milquetoast reaction to him where I don't care for him one way or the other, for real. He's just kind of there. And yeah, I just don't have too much to say about him. His arc is cool, like you said, but I don't know.
Yeah, and like the thing I guess maybe I appreciate this even more too is because this case is so long. Like we are not joking when I say like this is twice as long as case 4. It's damn near like, I mean, I think I played this game for 24 hours to beat all these cases, and I would say 11 to 11 and a half of those hours were just case 5. So like you almost get as much time with these characters as you would throughout the entire rest of the game. So we saw this arc between, Phoenix and Larry, Phoenix and Maya, Phoenix and Miles in the span of 3 or 4 cases previously. You kind of almost get not a similar arc, but some of these characters, you get an arc with them as well. And like,
say what you will about the case, but everybody feels pretty complete by the end
Fleshed
of
out.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing I will say is, and it's, I will say this, and then I'll introduce the last character. I don't feel like they did a good job. This takes place in between game one and game. I'm sorry. This takes place a little bit after the ending of game four, or the case four.
Case 4.
But like Miles, like damn near does not like. It almost is like you didn't get him off the hook the last case. He just doesn't really. I don't know. Like he doesn't.
Both of these cases are him dealing with his demons.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem appreciative of the fact that the things you did for him. So it's almost like that case didn't happen. And like you did say, he is dealing with his demons. So the demons he's dealing with in case 4 is his past. The demons he deals with this one is like the accusation that he uses faulty evidence, kind of like the accusations that have been on his mentor on Von Karma in the previous case. He's kind of dealing with that too. So he has stuff going on, but it just kind of seems like you could literally go from case 3 to case 5 and not like miss a beat. It seems like, like his attitude towards you doesn't really change. And I didn't necessarily like that because like
So this is kind of a weird thing since this isn't the way most Western audiences would have played the games or the order.
yeah.
But a lot of the stuff that happens in 4 and 5 especially set him up for how he is in Ace Attorney 2 in a lot of ways, without saying too much.
Okay.
So I think
All right.
if you do continue on with the series, I think you'll be pleased and you'll kind of see why 4 and 5 needed to happen to get him to where he is in Ace Attorney 2.
Okay. I mean, like overall, I like Case 4, but I just didn't like where it left his character at, and I was kind of hoping that they would revert back to the old Miles at the very least, or like he'd have some appreciation for what you did in Case 4, but it kind of didn't seem that way. It kind of seemed like, oh, he was still going through. It was almost like, oh, it's just a continuation of Case 4 Miles, almost, and I didn't really appreciate that.
I can see it in the outside of court sessions, but at least in the inside of court things,
Yeah,
kind of working together with him again. So it was kind of like the end of Case 3, if that extended on further.
Definitely. And then, so like the last character you meet is the chief of police. Name is Damon Gant, and this dude is a G. He has like he has an orange suit. I mean, he's dressed up. He almost kind of looks like
You?
no, not even that. I was gonna say, like, if you guys ever play Darkstalkers, he looks like Slayer from Darkstalkers, who's the vampire guy that fights with I mean, he's smoking a cigar the whole time, but he's in like a dapper suit. He has like the same stylization of hair, the glasses. He has the chin strap beard or whatever. But this dude, like, and it's funny because I talk about those other two characters that have those long, drawn-out animations. They play it to such a good effect with this character. I love it so much, and I can't explain it. Why I like it with him compared to the others, because like he has an animation where you say something and he just stares at you. No text bubble, nothing. For like 3 or 4 seconds. Then a text bubble pops up, and then his expression kind of changes, and he's kind of jolly, and he starts clapping, and they have a clapping hand, like a sound effect.
That sound effect is great.
I know, and it's just like it's like you say something, and he looks at you like you're the dumbest person in the world for like 3 or 4 seconds, and you're just kind of like, is he gonna respond? Then he does, and he's like just jolly or whatever, and like I love it so much, and it never got old. Even when like things turn on his character arc, it still plays out in the same exact way. It goes from being like, oh, is this dude about to jack me up? Or it goes from being like, did I say something wrong, to, oh, is this dude about to jack me up? Or like, and it's so good. And he has one of my favorite animations in the entire, he has my favorite, like, I'll say one of my favorite because I still really like Miles when he gets shocked by the kid. But I don't want to say it because Trevor hasn't hit it yet, but he has one of my favorite animations in the entire game when he yells out, no! And I wanted to take a screenshot of it, but it happens so quickly that it happens like 3 times, but you don't get to it doesn't freeze on it like it does for the other animations.
Yeah, it's a little shocking when.
But you know what I'm talking about, right, Dante?
I think so.
I think
Oh my god.
Marshall has a similar animation. I haven't seen the one that you're talking about where he yells no and like his poncho kind of flutters in the.
Yeah. Yeah, wait till you see Damon's though. Wait till you see Damon's. It's really good. But that's really it for the characters. This there's a ton of evidence that you find. I think you end up finding like you get up to 4 pages of evidence in this case, which all the other cases is like 2 minimum or maximum. But the really the only other thing we need to talk about for case 5 is the new stuff they added, the DS specific stuff. So I think we all kind of hit this. Overall, the game plays very similarly to the first game, but they introduce a couple of key things, and I just kind of want to get your guys' takes on them. So one of the first things they introduce is previously, in the previous cases, when you got a piece of evidence, it just went into your evidence, into your court records as a portrait. This is just a static portrait that, like had a blurb of text. But some of these pieces of evidence, they would be they'd go to your court records like before, and they'd have a portrait. But if you clicked on check, you would get like a 3D like image of the piece of evidence, and you could rotate it on its X and Y axis in order to basically like turn it to look at it from another angle or upside down, or like you could look at all, from any point of view or any vantage point or any angle on the piece of evidence, so you could kind of explore and find other things on it. And I was wondering, how did you guys feel about that? Because I personally, I thought it was awesome. Like, not everything had like stuff that you could, not every piece of evidence allowed you to do this with it, and not everything had something that was worth pointing out, but just the fact that you could turn this stuff around and like look at it it was really cool to me. And I didn't know what to expect going into case 5. And anytime I had a piece of evidence like that, I thought it was super cool. How'd you feel about it, Greg?
You guys were talking about
just
being able to examine the evidence, right?
Yeah, just a 360 angle.
I thought it was cool. I guess at this point in the game, it's enough to kind of shake things up a little bit, because you've kind of gotten the groove of, the I guess the gameplay groove of, trial, go look up evidence, kind of rinse repeat. But it was nice to have a little bit more control in that.
What about you, Trevor?
They were very welcome additions to this game. Like, I honestly thought this is how the game was going to be when I first started playing. Like, I was honestly expecting to be able to explore the crime scenes more, analyze stuff, be able to look at evidence. And so I was glad that it was introduced in this case.
Yeah. And then what about you, Dante?
So, I kind of have a mixed feeling about it. Traditionally, like, the original 3 games are my favorite in the series. And
this is the beginning of the end. The beginning of the purity, or the beginning of the end as far as the purity.
I mean, every Ace Attorney game is good in my opinion, very good. But sometimes with the evidence stuff, it gets a little weird. And normally, like, with the 3D evidence is where I'd find hiccups, and maybe that's on me for not like fully examining everything or whatever. But I think it's a good addition overall.
Yeah, so that was one of the things that they added. Another thing, like I said, Emma Skye, she's the scientific investigator, so she has 2 tools on her that she can use to help you investigate the crime scene a little bit more. The first one that she introduces is this, I think it's called a luminol fluid, and it's basically like this spray that you can do on a crime in a crime scene to kind of see where blood stains and just anything related to like blood stains, fingerprint or blood smudges and smears and all that. So the way they implement it is they show on the bottom screen, you can kind of just tap, and that you use that every tap as a spritz of the luminol fluid, and you can kind of just go ham on the uh, crime scene to kind of just spray wherever, and you can kind of just like see blood stains and any type of blood on the in the crime scene to investigate further. And then the other one, and I'm not sure if you got this far, Greg, but she had a fingerprint kit, and that was also really cool because you could uh, you know, dust fingerprints, you know, so you could like, oh, there's a handprint or fingerprints at this crime scene, let's see who it matches up with. So then the way they do it is, again, you kind of like shake this powder out, like every time you tap on the bottom screen it shakes a little bit of powder out, so you can start shaking the powder out onto the screen, and then you blow into the microphone of the 3DS or DS, excuse me, to blow away the dust in any areas where there's not any fingerprint. It doesn't stick. So
Wait a minute.
What's up?
Like, is this like the Zelda blowing into the microphone thing?
They don't have this on the iOS version?
Of course not.
Oh, see, man, I didn't realize they didn't have that. I meant to ask, but I assumed they did.
Yeah, it didn't indicate anything like that. It just said to swipe away.
Oh,
lame.
Yeah, that's lame. Yeah, dude, you get to actually blow into the, well, at least I'm playing on 3DS, but I'm assuming it's the same with the DS. But yeah, it was just literally, I mean, I was doing it in bed one day, like, and Alyssa, my wife, she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm blowing the dust away. I'm trying to show these fingerprints." She's like, "Can you do that somewhere else? That's annoying." And yeah, dude, like, yeah, you can just throw out like a whole bunch of like dust on the screen, and then yeah, you blow into the microphone and it blows it away. It was really cool. So I'm guessing you didn't have to deal with that either, Greg, because weren't you playing on the phone, or did you even get that far?
Oh no, I didn't get that far.
Did you do the blood? You did the blood stuff though, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What's up, Dante?
Okay, there's two things. So, going through the case, did you ever run into any of the blood Easter eggs, I should say?
Probably not.
So, when you're in Marshall's office, you can spray the luminol stuff, and you will find some blood on top of the cactus, and it leads to some pretty good dialogue. Same thing with Miles Edgeworth's office. But anyway, aside from that, I was going to ask, after I told you that you can use the Y button to, well, you don't
Hold
use
it?
the Y button. Yeah, you can hold it in objection with your voice by holding a button. Did you start doing that at all?
I did it some, like, the entire time I was playing. I didn't do it until like case 5, because most of case 4 and the beginning of case 5, I was like not home playing. I was out in public, and there was no way I was going to be talking to my 3DS and out in public. But I did do it a couple times while I was playing at home.
Pretty good, right?
It is pretty good. It's very good, actually. And I'm trying to think. I think there was only two other instances. So, you get to a crime scene, and there's a jar, and it's broken, and it's a piece of evidence, and there's nothing you can do with the individual pieces. But then using this, because of the new technology with the DS, you're able to piece together this jar, and that's also kind of cool. So you get to like rotate the pieces and kind of put them into place and all that. So that was like a cool, neat little puzzle that they have you do. I guess did you do that, Trevor? I think that's past where Greg is.
Yeah, I got to that part.
Okay, and then I know you didn't get this, or at least you said you did. Maybe you got there later. But then they had another piece of evidence that was a videotape, surveillance tape, and you got to see like characters walking in 3D renderings of these characters walking. Did you see that?
Yeah, that tripped me out. I guess because I've been playing this game so long, I hadn't seen any type of actual like continuous animation until this
right?
scene.
Yeah, that was really cool. And then I also just 3D renderings of these characters too, because they've all been like, stills and portraits and all that, right? So that was really interesting to see. You could basically watch this videotape, surveillance tape, and you could pause it, rewind it, fast forward it, and that was pretty interesting. And I think the only other thing that they introduced, and this is later on, is at one point you have to prove that something actually wasn't at a crime scene, and so you get to use the rotating feature to kind of like mimic the shape of a silhouette that a character has drawn, and that part was very frustrating. It took me like 4 or 5 times to line it up to the right spot. And did you have that same issue, right, Dante?
Dude, that part can just go burn itself.
Yeah, and
Like,
it's during the trial phase of the game too, and luckily when you present the shape that you create to the judge, they don't dock you if it doesn't look like what it needs to, because otherwise I would have failed out a couple times. And but that was really it that they added for case 5. As far as I'm concerned, go ahead, Dante.
this isn't like a gameplay edition per se, but one other interesting aspect of Case 5 is that it deals a little bit more with like legal knowledge and like the rules of court and stuff like that, and I thought that was an interesting twist on what you traditionally have.
Yeah, it was that was definitely involved. One of the things, so I finished this case yesterday night, and I'm not gonna lie, I think me and Dante talked about this a bunch. This was my least favorite case in this game, and it was probably the hardest case in this game, the most frustrating case I experienced in this game, and I the most boring case in this game, the most like the most everything basically. And I really, when I finished the case, or when I was getting close to, I mean, I put 6 hours into this case yesterday, and like halfway through, I was really sour on this case, and I was just like, I hate this case. And after sitting on it overnight and like thinking about it today, I don't think the case is as bad as I was saying it was yesterday. And I also, I didn't like how it wrapped up yesterday, but after sitting on the ending as well, there is a lot of that Phoenix Wright's third eye, seeing this thing that only he can see, and he's the only person that can prove that it happened. And it was just it's especially frustrating personally, because this case, so like the case 4 was 2 cases in one. This is damn near like 3, maybe even 4 cases in one, and it gets very convoluted because you're finding evidence for different cases while you're doing stuff. And so like a lot of times, but like I said, by the end you have like 4 pages of evidence that you can present. And so by the time it's at the end, it's like, okay, like this would you need to contradict something in a testimony, and you have like that one piece of evidence, but sometimes it's kind of hard to know which evidence you need to present in order to contradict what they're saying. And I don't know, like I failed a bunch of times in this case and got stuck a couple of times, but I don't think it's it's compared to the rest of the cases, I don't think it's my least favorite, but I still think overall like it's okay. I just wish it wasn't as long. If that makes any sense. Trevor?
You thought this one was the hardest?
I think this is the
By
hardest
far.
case.
I don't know. I thought this one did a better job at leading you to your next objective than the other cases.
But I mean, you say that being like 2/3 of the way through, and I'm not saying like it will get harder, but I feel like a lot of times it's just a lot of I don't know. I played this over the course of a week, this case. So maybe it's the amount of time that I took in between each playthrough or whatever. But it just like, there was a lot of times where there's a specific part where you do something and you got to ask Gumshoe a question, or you basically have to prove Gumshoe that both these pieces of evidence are important. And I proved to him one was important, but I didn't remember what the other piece was. And I kept trying to re-trigger the dialogue to see the portrait so I could see what it was in order to rejog my memory in order to present what I needed to present in order to prove that it was important, but I couldn't get him to show me the picture because there was no way it was going to pop back up. So I ended up walking around to other people, showing them evidence, and then giving the canned response that this isn't relevant. And it's like, what the hell you mean? This is super relevant to, like, they give you, like, when you present evidence to certain people, there's certain evidence that they're saying, oh, that's not important, or blah, 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 and they give you some canned response, and you present them evidence that is important, and they give you a different response. And, like, I just couldn't figure out how to trigger that response for Gumshoe, and it was so frustrating, and that was, like, the one time in this entire game that I played that I had to look it up, because I was stuck for, like, 20-ish, 30-ish minutes. I even, like, turned the game off at a certain point. I was just, like, I just, like, saved it, turned it off, and I tried to think about it. I went to go do something. I was thinking about it while I was doing that thing. I went to go do something else. And I'm like, oh, this is obviously I have to present this thing. I turned the game back on and I try to do it and it doesn't work. And I'm like, damn it. Like, I just sat here for 40 minutes doing other things, thinking about this game, and I still didn't make any progress. And you got anything you need to add, Dante? Because
I'm kind of with you on this one where I've played through this game at least 3 times at this point, maybe 4. And this is still the one where, like, inevitably there's something that always, like, just stumps me where I'm like, I know I talked to this guy and I know I need to trigger this. And logically speaking, this was the last scene that had a quote-unquote cutscene before it. So it's probably something I need to do here, but I can't figure out what I need to do. Yeah. But also I'd like to go back to your point of just, like, sometimes when you walk away from the game and you're just left thinking about it, I really like that feeling, even though it can be frustrating at the same time.
I like that feeling, and I didn't really experience it until this case. Unfortunately, a lot of times when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about it out of frustration and not out of, like, reverence or, like, oh, like, I really, like, the few times prior when I thought about the game, I was like, man, this game is awesome. I really like it. When it happened to be this case, every time I was thinking about it out in real life, it was just like, man, what do I need to do in order to get past this part? Like that was what it was this entire case for me. And I think that the main issue I have, kind of like what you're saying, is, like, I feel like a lot of times, you always ask the question before you present evidence. And I just felt like a lot of times the question that you're asked was a little bit confusing or misleading to make you second guess the evidence that you should be presenting in order to progress. And I feel like the earlier cases did a better job of, like, what, they would say something like, what proves that the witness was at the crime scene? And it's super easy, but then, like, the way they worded it while you were presenting evidence in this case was just, like, it didn't help out in that situation the same way it did previously. I don't know how to explain it other than that, and that's not even really a great explanation.
I think that's pretty spot on.
I was like, oh, you don't agree? Okay. I think it's not a bad case, Trevor. I think it's definitely worth finishing out, especially since you put so much time in. And I think you should finish it out too, Greg. But I think if you had any type of issue with the way Case 4 ended, as far as, like, that leap of logic and just, like, how Phoenix Wright is the only person that can see this thing, how it actually, he's the only person that can see this thing, how it happened, then you are going to have a trip with the way this story ends, because there is a lot more leaps of logic in this one.
Did you guys think that the payoff at the end of Case 5 was good, or, like,
I don't know.
I have a different perspective.
It basically, I think one of the characters that I liked arced in one way. The arc of the other character that I liked arced the other way. So I'm kind of indifferent on the ending, in the sense that it was good for one character and not so good for the other character. Ultimately, if what Dante says is true, and I believe him, it would probably be good for Edgeworth. So I'm pro the ending of the case because it came to a conclusion that will lead Edgeworth to being back to being Edgeworth, which I'm cool with that. So I don't want to spoil too much else though. So I think it was a good ending.
Without saying too much, I think Marcus pretty much hit the nail on the head. It's not. There's a really good breakdown at the end. Everything resolves itself, and it's a little bit harder to follow than Case 4, which Case 4 can be a little bit hard to follow on its own. So I can definitely understand that criticism. It sets up a really interesting part of not only Ace Attorney 4, but Ace Attorney 2 as well. So if you plan to continue on with the series, it's definitely like... I don't think the case itself is great, but I think as far as world building and I guess as its own little standalone thing, if you don't treat it as part of Ace Attorney 1, then I have a lot more respect for it. And I remember disliking the case the first time I went through the game and the following time I went through the game. But this time I was a little bit more neutral on it just because I kind of recognized all the things they were trying to do with it. It's probably the most ambitious case in the game, which is kind of a weird way to put it because I feel like all the cases are very lovingly crafted. But they kind of went overboard with this one. It's almost like you have too many chefs in the kitchen at once, and they're like, let's try to make the best case ever. And the dish itself is pretty good, but there are a lot of like charred edges just because certain components couldn't be curtailed to the extent that the rest of the game was curtailed to. So yeah, I definitely recommend trying to finish the case, and if you can't, don't let that hold you back from the rest of the series. Because one, difficulty-wise, it's pretty much as hard as the final case of the trilogy. And then two, lengthwise, it's the longest case of the trilogy.
Yeah, it's almost like, so case 2 is like a case in a case. And then case 3 is like, yo dog, I heard you like a case in a case. Or we're going to put 2 cases in one case, and then we're going to double the length. And it's just like, if 4 was at all confusing, or like you kind of got lost a little bit, like I think that is just going to be double. Like I felt a lot of the same feelings I felt in 4, I felt like were amplified in 5.
Doesn't it feel like Case 5 could be its own game? Like if they sold you Case 5 on a DS cartridge,
it could be a 3-case game. 3-case game. Because there's literally 3 cases. Like, I mean, they're all related in the same way that the 2 cases in Case 4 were related. But it was just like you literally find a piece of evidence and it was related to one thing. And like, I don't know, like they also had some pieces of evidence that you had in Case 5, which I mean, this is real life, so, or like, you know, like how it would be in real life. But there's pieces of evidence that you find in Case 5 from what I'm well, no, I think every piece of evidence you find you can present in court, or like.
I think there's some stuff that there might be like 1 or 2 things that you don't use in that case.
Yeah, so my 2 questions I had, and we can kind of wrap this up unless Trevor and Greg have anything, but I was going to ask, do they ever give you like faulty evidence or evidence that like you think is important in later games, but like it's actually like, it's just like fake evidence or like just not important, non-consequential stuff? And then my other question are the DS cases, and I know I'm going ahead, but are the DS cases like as long as this case, or is this just like a one-off? Like, are they more like the length of the Case 3 and Case 4, or are they more like this case length?
So Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney for the DS is the longest of the trilogy. When you have Case 5 involved, it's the longest by far. If you're going off of just the base games, Ace Attorney itself is the shortest, probably followed by Ace Attorney 2, then Ace Attorney 3. Typically speaking, I'd say Ace Attorney 2 and Ace Attorney 3 are like Ace Attorney 1's length minus Case 5 plus like 4 or 5 hours. So I'd expect those to take about 20-ish a piece.
Well, I was mostly talking about, because this came out between 3 and 4, I was mostly talking about like 4 and on, like the DS games, like... yeah.
Some of those cases can drag a little bit, to be honest. I don't think 4 drags that much, but 5 and 6... I think 6 is known for having the longest case in the series.
Gotcha. Okay, that's all I was wondering. Like, I was getting ahead because I haven't played 2 or 3, but I'm super looking forward to... I plan on playing those 2 games in the series as well, so I want to check those out. And like, you're not the first Phoenix Wright fan to say that the original trilogy is your favorite, so I'm definitely glad I got this trilogy, and I'm going to check out those other games.
Bro, we should have a side cast once you get done with those.
And I guess, do you guys have any other questions, Trevor or Greg?
No, I think that's it.
Nah, I think some of my questions might end up getting answered at the end of Case 5, so...
Okay.
Before we close, I just want to see where you guys think things are going, since I obviously know, but...
I mean, I don't want to guess right and then spoil it for Greg.
Yeah, let Greg go.
Yeah, I'm not.
No. I'm not talking about like into Case 5. I'm talking about like sequels and stuff. You know how we talked about like what we think Beyond Good and Evil 2 would be.
Got you. I would say, probably the beginning or first case of 2, you get reunited with Maya, and I'm interested. I don't want to. I can't say this other thing, but I'm interested to see what's up with Gumshoe. Like, that's all I got. Actually, I want to see what's up with Gumshoe and Edgeworth. I think Maya will be back, though. She will be back by your side, and she will be able to... Her training came through, and she will be able to channel her inner Mia whenever.
Yeah, I want to see Maya come back after doing that whole training montage. Eye of the Tiger and all that. And I don't know, I honestly want to see more new characters. Like, I think their characters are interesting.
Yeah, I would probably say about the same thing. Like, obviously, I would assume Maya would be coming back. Maybe there'd be more like spirit channeling stuff. Kind of look forward to more kind of twists and like spins on the formula I think that they have so far. So, yeah, I'm interested to see where the series goes. So, I think my interest is peaked enough to at least start the second game if I can finish this one.
F that. I want the old characters. Bring back Lotta Hart. I want her back, and I want my boy Karma back. Let Karma like break out of prison and then commit a murder, and then he has to defend himself. He's like he's the defendant, and he's also defending himself. And you're Phoenix Wright. You do a heel turn, and you are the prosecutor. Yeah, that's what I want. Game 2.
I just want to say, like, you guys are going to be so excited if you get all the way to the end of this trial. You guys should continue playing. I guess one short thing, the one mechanical change to the court side of things that they do in Ace Attorney 2 and 3 is that not only can you present evidence, you can present profiles. So when you go to your court record, you have evidence, and you also have a profile tab, which has all the people that you've met during the case. So sometimes you'll be asked certain questions, and it's like, oh, well, there was nobody at the, let's say, parking garage at X time. So then you can present, oh, well, here, Lotta Hart was here at the parking garage at X time. So it adds a new layer to the difficulty.
Gotcha. Well, I think that will conclude our conversation on the case 4 and 5 of Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Greg, do we have any questions?
That's a negative. But if you guys want to get involved with the show or share any feedback or just have anything you want to share with the podcast, you can hit us up at misscheckpoints@gmail.com.
All right. And where can people find you, Greg?
You can find me on Twitter at BoomboxHero. Facebook is the same. I think facebook.com/BoomboxHero, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/xdrdmagnegrox.
And where can people find you at, Dante?
They can find me on the internet now.
And where can people find you at, Trevor?
You can find me all across the interwebs, Lyric Unsung.
And you can find me at Potato Salad on Twitter. Yeah. Our next game will be Trevor's month, the month of April. So we have 2 games on the docket. We have Brothers and we have Transistor. I believe we're starting off with Brothers. I think that's what we all said. So if you don't have those games, make sure to pick those up so you guys can play along with us. And if you have been keeping up with our calendar, you will see that Trevor's month is the last month on the schedule. And we said last time that we are going to do a fan-submitted vote again for the month of May. So we are taking submissions through the end of March. So this episode will release on the 25th of March. So you have just under a week to continue to submit games to us via Facebook, our Facebook page. Thus far, the only requirements are they have to be games that are under 20 hours. We've been getting a lot of submissions from you guys that are not under 20 hours. So make sure to check How Long to Beat and type in your game, howlongtobeat.com, and type in the game that you want to suggest just to make sure. Those are like estimates, like a lot of people's like different play times. Some people are speedrunning, some people are enjoying the game or whatever. So they're not 100% accurate, but that's what we've been going off of when determining game length. So make sure the game that you suggest is under 20 hours. The only other caveat is that it cannot be a game that we've already played. So any game we've already talked about, have an episode about, we are not going back and playing.
Are we still doing...
Other than that...
And something that we can actually play, too.
Yeah, I was going to say, make sure we all have the console, so... I think the last time we did current gen or last gen games.
Yeah, and I think for the most part, most of the games we got have been... I say that, but I'm not 100% sure.
I've seen a few GameCube games.
I mean, you have a Wii, don't you?
It's somewhere around here.
Yeah, I mean, I think all games you can play all the GameCube games you can play on Wii. Don't quote me on that. But thus far, our lists, as last I checked, we have Advance Wars, Ape Escape, Cave Story, Chaos Legion, Cortex Command, Dark Watch. Somebody suggested the Devil May Cry series, so I just put down all 5 games. So Devil May Cry 1, 2, 3, 4, and then DMC Devil May Cry, which is the reboot game. Dragon Ball Z Fighters, the story mode. Doki Doki Literature Club. I think this is one of the GameCube games Trevor was talking about. Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem. Feel the Magic XYXX. Geometry Wars. Interesting. Gunpoint, Slay the Spire, Subnautica, which I think that might actually be a 25-hour game, so we might not be able to do that one. Summon Knight, Swordcraft Story, The Evil Within, Yakuza. Somebody said the Yakuza series, and I think that the Yakuza Kiwami was the only one that was sub 20 hours, and like that's an open world game, so that could be kind of iffy. We'll see. And then the Zone of the Enders 1 and 2. So I think I combined those and just put the Zone of the Enders HD collection. So I think those are all the ones that I personally got messaged or I saw on the page. I think we will tweet it, or not tweet it out, we'll message it out on the page one more time this week. I think what we will do is we will have our list. Then at the end of the month, we will, just like we did last time in December, the four of us are going to go through the list and we will each nominate our 1 or 2 games for our choice. And then we will have the poll up. And we'll put the poll up maybe the middle of the month. I'll have a date. I will have a concrete date when we put on the next episode. And then we will also have our own individual games picked out, and we'll start like acquiring those. And then our second episode, the Transistor episode, we will reveal the winning game in the poll, and we will also reveal the schedule for the months of June through June through September. So we'll have the next 5 months mapped out, basically a month from now. So stay tuned for one last week of submitting games, and then stay tuned for the poll, because we will be messaging that out promptly at the beginning of the month of April. So until next time, we are Miss Checkpoints, and we'll catch you later. Peace.